Picture a loner boy yearning to make contact with aliens and a popular girl wishing for ghosts to be real, but coincidentally their worlds end up colliding and their wishes come true. Having immersed themselves into the world of paranormal and supernatural phenomenons, our lovebirds must work together to survive in this funky new world. Opening on Momo Ace arguing with her boyfriend. Annoyed that her boyfriend continues to hound her for money, but when her boyfriend asks for Momo to offer up her body, Momo fires off a roundhouse kick. Having blocked the kick, the boyfriend retaliates by kicking Momo away, leaving Momo on the ground as he breaks up with Momo, seeing as she isn't useful to him anymore. In class, Muko and Miko scold Momo for choosing such a dreadful boy to be her first boyfriend ever, but Momo defends herself by saying that her ex-boyfriend resembled her dream date, Ken Takakura. Momo cries that she loves masculine men, but her friends ask Momo to stop dreaming. That day, Momo stumbles through the school hallways, suddenly stopping in front of a class where she sees Akaran being bullied by his classmates. But before the bullies can escalate things, Momo decides to stand up for Akaran and sit beside him. Having deterred the bullying, Momo asks what Akaran is reading, but getting bored, Momo decides to leave the scene. Later that day, Momo continues to storm through the hallways, suddenly noticing Akaran calling out to her, but seeing as Akaran has misinterpreted her kindness as some sort of love confession, Momo clarifies that she doesn't have any feelings for Akaran. Luckily, Akaran shows off the magazine he was reading earlier regarding the discovery of extraterrestrial beings on Mars, asking if Momo is a fan as well. Sadly, Momo states she could care less about UFO or aliens. Akaran continues to rant about UAPs and Japan's preparation for a space war, but Momo begins to leave. When Akaran tries spilling more information on Momo, Momo gets pissed, stating that her recent breakup is souring her mood, crying that Akaran's geekiness is the reason he doesn't have friends, only to fling his magazine aside. As Momo leaves the saddened Akaran, Momo realizes she may have said too much, immediately apologizing as she hands Akaran his magazine back. Momo admits that she does believe in ghosts, but Akaran begins to giggle, stating that ghosts don't exist, causing the two to despise each other. Momo reveals that her grandma is a spirit medium, asking if Akaran has ever seen an exorcism where the victim convulses, but Akaran simply plays it off as the victim having an illness. Momo fires back by demanding to know what proves aliens exist, but as the two continue to bicker, Muko and Miko stumble onto the two, glad to see Momo is getting over her breakup. Momo states that if she can prove ghosts exist, she demands Akaran serve her as a gopher, something that Akaran agrees to, as he states he'll make Momo serve him when he proves aliens exist. That night, Momo heads to the abandoned Nagi General Hospital, having been instructed by Akaran to head to the top floor and call for a UFO to abduct her. Momo is freaked out by the rundown location, wondering what sorts of things these aliens will do to her once abducted. But Momo gets weirded out hearing that Akaran may have been abducted in the past, but his memories seem to have been wiped. As for Akaran, he's seen visiting an abandoned railway tunnel as instructed by Momo, boldly heading over some guardrails as he declares he'll prove ghosts don't exist. With some teasing from Momo, Akaran soldiers on into the dark tunnel, but Akaran gets furious hearing that Momo has never met a ghost before. Momo reminds Akaran that her grandma is a spirit medium and that her grandparents mean a lot to her, seeing as her parents are never around, something that makes Akaran feel sorry for Momo. Momo adds that her family is quite weird, having been forced in her younger years to uphold rituals on her way to school for good luck, but naturally such a thing caused her to be bullied by the kids her age. But worst of all, the boys she liked made fun of her. Momo remembers blaming her grandma for making her feel so outcast, feeling bad that her relationship with her grandma grew distant since then. It's also the reason Momo believes in ghosts so much as she wants to defend her grandma's beliefs. Momo had realized that she hated the fact that the boy she liked didn't believe in ghosts, and in turn her grandma, something that Momo refuses to compromise on, especially since her grandma did so much to raise her. But having said too much, Momo asks why Akaran believes in aliens. Akaran states that he doesn't have any solid reason like Momo to believe in aliens, but having discovered some bloody footprints leading up to him, distracting himself by pointing out how easy it is to speak to Momo over the phone. Slowly getting freaked out, Akaran checks behind him for any ghost. But upon turning back into the tunnel, Akaran stumbles onto the ghost of Granny that morbidly offers to do kinky things to Akaran. Terrified, Akaran sprints back through the tunnel, reporting to Momo that he found a ghost. But as Akaran continues towards the exit of the tunnel, the exit suddenly seems more distant than before. When Akaran turns to check on the ghost Granny, the entire tunnel turns red, hearing from Momo that the Turbo Granny ghost is a creature you should never lose to in a race, seeing as you'll be cursed if you lose. As the Granny sprints after Akaran, it easily catches up to him, forcing Akaran to hang up on Momo, scaring her. Rushing to check on Akaran, Momo instead notices some flashing lights, only to notice 3 businessmen staring at her. With Momo attempting to flee, she's ultimately captured, waking up bound to a chair only to hear the 3 businessmen utter that they are Serpoians from the planet Serpo. Momo is shocked to be speaking to aliens, but gets annoyed seeing as they ripped her clothes off of her, demanding to be set free. The alien Rokuro reveals that their species reproduces by cloning and doesn't house any females, stating that they want to reclaim their former glory by mating with a human, unveiling a mechanized serpent that horrifies Momo. Momo declares that her first time will be reserved for Ken Takakura, but as the aliens hold Momo down, they begin arousing Momo by tampering with her brain waves using psychokinesis. The aliens are impressed that Momo is resisting their arousal, but as the aliens try to force themselves onto Momo, they suddenly hear a ring from Momo's phone. As one of the aliens picks up the call, Turbo Granny can be seen emerging from the phone, immediately dispatching one of the aliens. It's revealed that Akaran had been cursed by Turbo Granny and seems to be struggling with control over his new body. But as Turbo Granny takes back her body, we see the aliens unveiling their true form. Revealed to be disturbing frog-looking monsters, one of the aliens attempt to bind Turbo Granny with her psychokinesis, but Turbo Granny simply speeds up dispatching another alien. When Granny hunts down the third, she is ultimately caught and flung into a nearby wall. But with Akaran able to temporarily gain control of his body, he is annoyed that he never was able to make contact with aliens even when he was a young boy calling out to them. Akaran was bullied due to his beliefs, but having met Momo, Akaran was shocked she was the first to ever believe in him, crying that he won't let anyone hurt her. As Akaran begins accepting Turbo Granny into his body, he slowly begins to morph, but having been slammed into the wall by the alien again, Akaran's transformation is halted. Turning to Momo, the alien declares it'll make their session quick, resuming its telekinesis to arouse Momo. Momo suddenly remembers the moment when she had argued with her grandma. When Momo had told her grandma about the boy she liked bullying her, her grandma had asked Momo to tense her abs and fire off some chi from her head to scare away the bad spirits. But having been reminded of the boys bullying her, Momo had run off blaming her grandma for her bullies. In the present, Momo is in a daze, heeding her grandma's advice, choosing to flex her abs only to surprisingly break free from her chains. Akaran cries that Momo is using psychic powers that even disrupt the alien psychokinesis, but seeing her newborn powers, Momo declares that her grandma was right all along. Sending out a flying kick, Momo is reminded of her ex-boyfriend, officially dispatching the third alien as it's sent flying into its UFO. As the area around her begins to fall apart, Momo searches for Akaran, only to notice Turbo Granny has taken over his body. When Granny tries pouncing on Momo, Momo lets loose her powers to knock Granny out of Akaran, but seeing as Granny is still cursing Akaran, Momo watches Granny vanish, taunting Momo to seek it out in the tunnel if she wants Akaran's curse lifted. At the same time, we see the UFO flying towards the abandoned hospital, ramming through it only to crash land onto the road nearby. With the duo barely surviving the crash, they both acknowledge that aliens and ghosts are real, but Momo is annoyed that she has to continually suppress Akaran's curse with her psychic powers. Seeing as he needs to defeat Turbo Granny, Akaran gives Momo his clothes, apologizing for getting Momo involved as he states he'll deal with Turbo Granny himself. Momo reminds Akaran that he needs her powers to fight Granny, But as Akarin accepts Momo's proposal, he asks Momo to please cover herself up. Getting flustered, all of a sudden, Momo takes the chance to ask for Akarin's full name, coincidentally hearing that Akarin's full name is Kin Takakura as well. With Momo refusing to believe Akarin has such a cool name, we see Akarin's curse slowly taking over again, forcing Momo to suppress it with her psychic powers. Momo states that Akarin will be his nickname moving forward, but as the duo walk back home, the sun begins to rise, meaning they'll have to wait till night to face Turbo Granny, since ghosts only come out at night. Seeing as Akarin needs some clothes, Momo takes him to his granny's place. But Momo warns Akarin that her grandma despises boys, especially her ex. As the two enter the property, Akarin passes by a torii gate that suddenly ignites his body. But seeing no other choice, Momo tosses Akarin into a nearby river with her powers. Seeing as the gate had a protective totem on it, Momo apologizes, removing the barrier only for Akarin to safely enter the property. As the duo enter Momo's home, they head upstairs where Momo begins to change, but seeing as they broke line of sight, Momo orders Akarin to face a wall while she changes, that way she can still suppress Akarin's curse. Having changed into a fresh fit, Momo tosses Akarin one of her jackets, but Momo wonders how Turbo Granny cursed Akarin. Realizing something, Akarin checks his pants, realizing that his reproductive organ is missing, something Momo is curious to verify. Denying Momo access, Akarin gets changed, admitting that he only started talking to Momo since he had never had a friend before, and it seemed that Momo would be his best bet at first. Akarin admits that Momo lives a far different life than his, apologizing for getting Momo involved with such dangerous things. But Momo gets annoyed at Akarin for assuming how she feels. Momo states that Akarin has no friends because he pushes everyone away, something Akarin does not deny. But luckily Momo is happy to continue being Akarin's friend even after his curse is resolved, something that makes Akarin tear up. Embarrassed, Akarin calls Momo ugly, something that pisses Momo off. But before the two can brawl, they both hear a doorbell. Akarin wonders if Momo's grandma is home, but Momo reveals that she's never heard such a doorbell noise before, realizing that a spirit must have entered their property, and it's because they removed the talisman protecting them. Seeing as they need to reinstate the barrier, the duo sneak out the back door, both peeping to see who is at the front door, but no one is there. Akarin takes note of the cloudy sky, only for the surrounding land to be encased in stone, stopping any escape. The duo realizes that they can't reattach the talisman, seeing as the torii gate had been encased in stone as well. But upon inspecting the talisman a little more, Momo suddenly notices blood dripping from her nose. Right on cue, Akarin cries out in pain, having a nose bleed as well. But as Momo scans the perimeter, she notices a black fog has covered the surroundings. In the sky, a spirit declares that it has found our duo, uttering that a promise has been broken, clapping its hands only to send out a burst of wind. Seeing the spirit firing off a punch, our duo leap to evade, watching as the spirit smashes the talisman into the nearby wall. Terrified, the duo run for dear life, both flung beside the nearby house, only to continue fleeing from the spirit's attacks. Hiding behind the house, Akarin recognizes the spirit as the Flatwoods Monster, an alien that is commonly 3 meters tall and have been seen in the prefectures of Yamanashi, Japan. Momo wonders if there is a link between spirits and aliens, but seeing the monster spitting out the black fog, Momo states that she can't use her full powers while suppressing Akarin's curse. With Akarin's curse spiking again, the duo flee from their hiding spot, seeing as the monster smash the area they were in while searching for them. As Momo suppresses the curse, Akarin takes note of the state of Momo's home, realizing that he can't stand idly by and watch the monster wreak havoc anymore. Akarin asks if Momo can partially release the curse, both suddenly forced to relocate, seeing as the monster has discovered them again. But Akarin cries for Momo to continue suppressing Turbo Granny's mind control whilst allowing the physical enhancements through. Seeing no other choice, Momo focuses in, slowly allowing the curse to take over Akarin's body, But as the monster throws an axe kick onto the duo, Akarin rescues Momo, having transformed with Momo's help. Overflowing with power, Akarin begins talking strangely. But whilst Akarin and Momo are distracted, the monster approaches and attacks Akarin from behind. Luckily, Akarin had reacted fast enough, chewing off the monster's fingers. With Akarin and the monster face to face, Akarin suddenly begins coughing up blood, allowing the monster to get the upper hand, stomping Akarin into the ground. But Momo reacts quickly to rescue Akarin from his daze. Having reverted back to his human self, Akarin says his body can't handle the curse. But as the two observe the monster, they suddenly realize that the monster is performing sumo wrestling moves, wondering if they can defeat it by having its hands touch the ground. Intrigued by the idea, Akarin transforms once again, hearing that Momo will assist Akarin. But as the duo rush towards the monster, they spot the creature firing a ripple attack. As both barely dodge, Akarin manages to rip apart the monster's ankle, allowing Momo to drag the monster onto the ground, confirming its palm disappeared once it touched the ground. Sadly, the creature rolls to prevent its other hand from touching the ground, grabbing a hold of Momo only to toss her into the nearby wall with the torii gate. Following up by pummeling Momo, all whilst Akarin's curse begins to take over, but luckily, Momo is still awake to keep Akarin in check. Momo voices how annoying it is that the monster cheated, but this only pisses the monster off, prompting it to wail onto Momo. Having endured enough, Momo reveals she had used the monster's punches to carve out the torii gate, swiftly activating her psychic skills to drag Akarin toward her, only for her to reattach the talisman, setting the monster ablaze. Seeing as Akarin is outside the gate with her, they both gasp, seeing as everything is back to normal. But Momo does compliment Akarin's new permed hair. Tired, Momo suddenly collapses from exhaustion, leaving Akarin to begin transforming, seeing as the granny curse is taking over. Elsewhere, we see Santa Doria as a psychic giving a reading to a young male idol Shoma on a television show. But having gotten everything wrong about them, the producers wonder if Doria's is even psychic. Entering a taxi, Doria's is grilled by her taxi driver for being a fake psychic, but suddenly Doria's exits the taxi, ordering the driver to scram. Back with Akarin, we see his cursed body prepare to devour the unconscious Momo, but a sudden brick is broken over Akarin's face, blowing him back. Arriving on the scene, Doria's is revealed to be Momo's grandma, Seiko Ice. Seiko orders Akarin to attack her, but blinking and appearing behind Seiko, Akarin is suddenly set ablaze. Seiko admits that Akarin is quite fast, but having set up a trap prior, Seiko traps Akarin in a circle etched into the ground. Seiko reveals that she can convert the inside or outsides of her drawn circles into barriers, depending where she places a nail. But approaching Akarin, Seiko hears Akarin cursing at her. Seiko takes out her bat, clobbering and taunting Akarin. Seiko converts her bat into a pencil, drawing an even tighter circle around Akarin, but Turbo Granny's voice states that Akarin's body will perish if she dies. Sadly, Seiko could care less, seeing as her number one priority is to protect Momo, placing a nail in the circle only to set Akarin on fire. Later that day, Momo wakes up in bed, rushing downstairs only to greet Seiko. Seiko says she knows Momo has been messing around with spirits, but when Momo asks where her cursed friend is, Seiko declares that she has eradicated it. Momo cries for Seiko to stop joking around, but Seiko reminds Momo that ghosts aren't real, and plus Seiko is a fake ghost medium like Momo had accused her of being. Momo is annoyed that her grandma still holds a grudge against her, but seeing no other way, Momo apologizes to her grandma with a deep bow, begging to know where Akarin is. Hearing Seiko reveal Akarin is in the main shrine, Momo bolts towards the location, pleading for Akarin to be okay, but upon opening the shrine doors, Momo spots Akarin nonchalantly enjoying a rice ball. Slamming the door, Momo is embarrassed. She was worried for Akarin, but suddenly Seiko appears, teasing Momo for being into geeks. Seiko states that the shrine will suppress Akarin's curse, but leaving it will reawaken it. Momo takes the chance to fill Seiko in on Turbo Granny, cursing Akarin and her newly acquired psychic abilities. But Seiko is impressed that Akarin is cursed by such a powerful creature. Apparently, Turbo Granny used to be called 100 Kilo Granny, a yokai that haunts a tunnel, and a monster even Seiko herself avoided due to its immense spiritual power. Seiko states that spirits are the strongest when they fight in their bound locations, and seeing as Turbo Granny had fused with the tunnel, there is no chance of defeating them. Seiko advises Momo to forget about Akarin and continue living a normal life. But Momo refuses to do such a thing, quoting Ken Takakura and stating such a man would never leave someone in need of help alone. Amused, Seiko teases Momo for loving Akarin, but seeing as she can't leave her granddaughter to face the spirit alone, Seiko advises Momo to draw the spirit out of the city. Since Turbo Granny is quite prideful when it comes to winning races, Seiko instructs Momo to draw Turbo Granny out of Kamigo City to weaken it, and this way Turbo Granny can be taken out. Momo wonders why Seiko can't just plaster some talismans around Turbo Granny's tunnel. But sadly, Seiko says her talismans borrow powers from the gods in their current city, and each city have different gods ruling over them. Meaning once the granny is out of the city, the talismans will be no help. Seeing as drawing the granny out from their bound city is the only way, Seiko states that Akarin must begin training to outrun the Turbo Granny. But he'll need to carry Momo whilst training to keep his curse in check. Sadly, Akarin currently in his transform mode is quite weak, so Seiko orders Akarin to do push-ups, sit-ups, back extensions, and squats for 100 reps each, and Momo needs to improve her psychic skills. As Seiko heads to bed, Akarin mentions how young Momo's granny is, but Akarin also takes the chance to apologize for being so weak when facing the Flatwood monster, promising to repay the favor one day. Momo says Akarin is overthinking things, promising to always be there for him, something that flusters Akarin. Later that night, the news reported that all of Seiko's readings on Shoma were actually correct, but Seiko could care less. The next day, Akarin realizes he can't go to the bathroom without Momo watching him to suppress his curse. But Seiko asks Momo to explain how she is suppressing Akarin's curse in the first place. Momo reveals that she is able to sense and capture Akarin's aura with her hands, ultimately shrinking and subduing the curse. This is also true for objects she wants to pick up and move around, but Seiko asks Momo to try envisioning and feeling out the aura with her eyes closed, something that Momo manages to do, even surprised that Akarin's aura is quite cold. Sadly, it doesn't work very well as Momo has to relock onto Akarin, but having had enough, Akarin makes a dash for the bathroom. Momo stops Akarin from entering the front door, chasing Akarin down as she doesn't want a boy using her bathroom. But as the three rush towards a different bathroom, Akarin ends up relieving himself, all whilst Momo watches. Seiko utters that she suspects Momo's powers have most likely been sealed off, asking Momo to train alongside Akarin to further awaken them. But suddenly Turbo Granny's voice fills the surrounding area, as Seiko seems to be frozen in place with a nosebleed. Turbo Granny reveals that it can curse anyone that comes into contact with Akarin, demanding that Momo come see it in the tunnel tonight, or else it'll ensure everyone around Akarin is cursed. Retreating into the shadows, Seiko is seen all right with a bloody nose and ear, but seeing one of her talismans all bloodied, Seiko asks Momo what just happened. That night, Seiko suits our duo in the finest gear to ward off spirits. But as Momo turns to leave, Seiko quickly gives Momo a hug, reminding Momo to live no matter what. As the duo ride off, Seiko prays for them, but funnily enough, our duo have to board a train to conserve energy, drawing the attention of other passengers. With our duo appearing before the cursed tunnel, they both argue who should enter the tunnel first. But stealing their resolve, they both enter the tunnel, declaring they'll draw Turbo Granny out of the city to weaken and defeat it. Shining their light into the dark tunnel, our duo suddenly spot a massive head blocking their path, both preparing to flee, but they realize Turbo Granny has blocked them in from both sides of the tunnel. As the tunnel turns red, Momo quickly retrieves some bats they've brought, flinging them towards the eyes of one of the faces using her powers, but it doesn't faze the monster. Akarin cries for Momo to release his curse, allowing him to swell with power. But as Akaran marches towards one of the heads, he suddenly transforms back to a human. Turbo Granny reveals that she has removed Akaran's curse herself. That way they can't harm Turbo Granny with her own curse. Turbo Granny roars at our duo, preparing to devour them whole. But as Momo remembers her grandma's advice, Momo begins to taunt Turbo Granny, mocking how slow it is in a race. Momo demands to race Turbo Granny, something that surprisingly convinces Turbo Granny to morph back into her singular body, immediately accepting the challenge. Turbo Granny states she can devour our duo anytime, agreeing to count to 10 to allow our duo a head start. But when Turbo Granny tags our duo, their game of tag will be over. Momo says she hates people that break rules, allowing our duo to make their way to the tunnel's exit, but strangely Turbo Granny is counting weirdly, suddenly declaring that 10 minutes is up. In an instant, Momo is dragged into the tunnel and tied up by some hands, prompting Turbo Granny to restart the 10-minute count as it's time for Akaran to flee. Akaran is pissed at Turbo Granny's underhand tactics, demanding that Turbo Granny fight fair. But within a few seconds, Turbo Granny reaches the 10-minute count, reaching out to tag Akaran. Remembering that he had promised to protect Momo, Akaran rushes at Turbo Granny, clamping down on the monster's flesh as he demands the creature free Momo. Turbo Granny is pissed, attempting to rip Akaran off it, but sadly Akaran's sacred clothing is preventing Turbo Granny from harming Akaran. In pain, Turbo Granny chooses to possess Akaran, using his own hands to shred his clothes. But as Turbo Granny heads over to devour Momo, it suddenly senses a presence crushing it. Revealed to have been Momo, who has finally detected Turbo Granny's curse in Akaran, Momo begins to subdue the cursed flame, watching as Turbo Granny rushes to attack Momo. But luckily Momo completely seals Turbo Granny within Akaran. With Akaran completely fine now, Granny cries to be set free, all whilst a strange monster smashes through the tunnel, crying for Turbo Granny to be freed. As the location-bound spirit chases after our duo, Akaran wonders why the spirit is a crab, but Momo says the dead turn into crabs in order to cross a river into the afterlife. As Turbo Granny cries out to the crab, we see Momo ordering Akaran to transform, both barely dodging an attack from the crab. With Momo riding Akaran, Akaran states his body won't be able to hold on for much longer, choosing to leap off the nearby railing, all plummeting down into the town below them. Having used one of his 2 full-throttle moves to soften their fall, the gang notice the area around them turning red, all watching as the crab leaps onto their location. Spotting various faces on the crab's back, Akaran begins to run, realizing that the people around them can't see the crab. But worst of all, Akaran doesn't seem to have the strength to make it out of Shono City before he collapses. Getting an idea, Momo instructs Akaran to head into a nearby Japanese spar, choosing to weave up some stairs to distract the crab, only to position below some pipes. When the crab appears before our duo, Momo tears open some pipes to flood the monster with hot water, something that ends up boiling it. Seeing the boiled crab all stiff, our duo continue to flee the city, reaching the edge of Shono City. But out of nowhere, a horde of undeads rush them. Turbo Granny utters that a cemetery is near the edge of Shono City, and Granny is now using the undeads to hunt down our duo as well. When Momo tries to run alongside Akaran, she suddenly trips, giving the undeads along with the newly healed crab a chance to surround them. Something that makes Momo ask Akaran to use his final full throttle. Seeing no other way, Akaran transforms, suddenly bursting through the horde of undeads attacking them, assisted by Momo, who helps move away some of the undeads with her power. Having used some power lines as an anchor point, our duo managed to run alongside a building to evade the swarm of undeads, suddenly cut off by the massive crab. Luckily, Momo tosses a car at the crab, buying Akaran enough time to scale the monster and use it as a launch pad to reach a nearby crane. Swinging around the crane with Momo's powers, our duo launch themselves towards a nearby moving train. But before they can reach the train, Akaran suddenly reverts back to a human. Desperate, Momo expands her psychic palms to slow down their fall, crying for Akaran to transform once more, giving Akaran the courage to surpass his limits and transform in time to soften their fall. With our duo both fatigued and exhausted, Momo hurries Akron to move, seeing as they're almost out of the city, but realizing that Turbo Granny is no longer sealed inside of Akron. Turbo Granny appears, kicking our duo to the ground. Seeing as Turbo Granny has completely bested them, Momo states she hates people who cheat, something that pisses off Turbo Granny as she merges with her crab body, offering Momo another chance to flee. Turbo Granny offers to count to 20 minutes this time, but Momo says she'll only need 1 second, suddenly using her powers to latch onto the moving train nearby, all whilst dragging the exhausted Akron with her. Horrified, Turbo Granny begins chasing after the train, barely losing to the train's immense speed, but racking its brain. Turbo Granny manages to leap onto the train before it leaves her behind. Although Turbo Granny is in front of them, Momo cries that they've already won, suddenly zooming out only to see Seiko at the edge of Shono City, having plastered her talismans in the adjacent city of Kamigo City in preparation for the monster. As Momo holds off Turbo Granny from advancing, the train passes into the next city, prompting Turbo Granny to suddenly erupt, spewing out the bodies of its past victims. At the next station, Momo confirms that Turbo Granny is indeed defeated, cutting to the next day, where Seiko takes our duo to pray at the tunnel. Apparently, many girls were attacked near Turbo Granny's tunnel, and it may have been the girls' unfair deaths that ultimately drew Turbo Granny to set its nest near the tunnel. But it's still wrong for a spirit like Turbo Granny to attack the living out of vengeance for the girls who unfairly met their fates. Seiko reminds our duo to never disrespect the dead, as it's the bare minimum to coexist with spirits. But Seiko is glad that Momo and Akron made it out in one piece. At home, Seiko and Momo argue over who gets to eat more boiled crab, all whilst Akron sits awkwardly. Seiko takes the chance to check if Akron's reproductive organ has returned, chasing him around the room, all whilst Momo slurps up the crab meat. Seeing as it's getting late, Akron bids Momo and Seiko farewell, but before Akron leaves, Momo says she'll see him tomorrow at school, exciting Akron. The next day, Akron wonders how he should greet Momo, nervously walking by Momo so as to not embarrass himself. But out of nowhere, Momo lightly shoves Akron, having been waiting for him. As the two walk to their classes, Momo wonders why the aliens she met were all guys and what they eat to survive. But as the two depart to their separate classes, Akron is immediately back to being bullied by his classmates. Sitting down, Akron calms himself, seeing as he's finally made a friend who accepts him for who he is. But as we follow Momo, we see she is completely zoned out of class. Miko and Muko fears Momo is still thinking about her ex-boyfriend, but is surprised to see Momo acting strangely. In class, both Akron and Momo yearn to speak to each other, both waiting out their classes only to accidentally pass each other, squeezing through a horde of people. With both Akron and Momo visiting each other's classes, funnily enough, they both barely miss each other, both wondering if the others dislike them. Seeing as their lunch break is almost over, they both reluctantly prepare to head back to class. But having not seen where they were going, they both bump into each other, accidentally touching lips. They both confess that they've been searching for each other, accidentally making the moment awkward as they wonder what they should say next, but out of nowhere, Miku and Muko cry that they just saw our duo kissing. Immediately, the lovebirds defend themselves by insulting each other, ending their argument as they both storm back to class. But Akron chooses to take a pit stop in the bathroom. When Akron goes to relieve himself, he suddenly realizes something is missing, cutting back to Momo, where her classmates all pester her over a new love interest. Out of nowhere, Akron appears, signaling to speak with Momo alone, but still angry about their argument earlier. Momo refuses to leave her seat. As Akron continues to beg, he admits he was wrong to insult Momo earlier, but Momo is still too stubborn to budge. Momo's friends are amazed at Akron's persistence, but seeing Momo's cold demeanor, Akron wonders if Momo truly cares about him, seeing as she refuses to speak to him when she is around her friends. That evening, Akron wanders around the lockers in search of Momo, but having accidentally bumped into Arya Shirtoria, Akron is caught off guard. Arya strangely utters that she knows Akron is a kind person, all whilst Momo stumbles onto Akarin chatting with Arya. As Arya leaves with Tsubame, Arya begins mocking how pathetic Akarin behaved in front of her, something that pisses Momo off. Using her psychic powers, Momo smashes a metal bowl onto Arya, knocking her out. With Tsubame and Anzu checking on Arya, Akarin prepares to help as well, but Momo grabs on Akarin. Momo says they should head home, glaring at Arya as she cries most girls aren't deserving of Akarin's attention. On the way home, Momo apologizes for being so stubborn earlier, admitting that their little kiss got her flustered. Seeing as they've made up, Akarin reveals that although they've defeated Turbo Granny, it seems his balls are still missing. Sitting down with Seiko, Akarin explains the situation, all whilst Momo laughs her head off. Needing to solve the issue, Seiko states they'll be peeping into Akarin's soul, taking out a mirror only to have Akarin plunge his feet into a water bath. With Momo retrieving a doll and a talisman, Seiko begins her ritual, first slapping Akarin with a paper fan only to order for the spirit within Akarin to leave. Sadly, nothing happens, but Momo declares that Akarin's aura briefly changed when he was smacked, prompting Seiko to order Momo to rip out the thing infecting Akarin's soul. As Seiko smacks Akarin once more, Momo pulls as hard as she can, all turning to face the doll, only to notice the talisman beside it turn red. In an instant, the doll flees the scene, forcing our trio to chase after it, but needing a faster way to track it down, Momo closes her eyes only to reach out to the doll's soul. Seeing as the doll was hiding in a closet, Momo smirks at the adorable doll cursing at them. But when Seiko inspects the doll, she states that Turbo Granny is inside the doll. Apparently before Turbo Granny was incinerated by Seiko's talismans, it had converted into its astral form and hid inside of Akarin's soul in hopes of retrieving its full strength one day. Sadly, Momo states that they have no intentions of allowing Turbo Granny to return to its full strength, but Turbo Granny throws a fit, stating that she'll snap everyone's bones. Akarin threatens to eradicate Turbo Granny if it doesn't return his balls, but Turbo Granny states that if she perishes, Akarin will never get back what he wants. Turbo Granny tries, ordering Akarin to slay Seiko and Momo, but out of nowhere Akarin transforms, confusing Momo, seeing as Akarin shouldn't be cursed anymore. Seiko reveals that when Turbo Granny's soul was ejected from Akarin, her spiritual powers remained within Akarin, and only Seiko herself can place Turbo Granny back into Akarin, something that makes Turbo Granny sweat. As Seiko slaps up Turbo Granny, Akarin reverts back to his human form, uttering that he was able to transform when he felt angry. Seeing as Turbo Granny is basically useless, Momo begs Turbo Granny to give back Akarin's private parts, knowing that Turbo Granny is actually a kind spirit, having felt sympathy for the girls that passed away, unfortunately, near her tunnel. Giving in, Turbo Granny declares that she no longer has Akarin's balls, having dropped them somewhere. Turbo Granny utters that Akarin's belonging should be covered in gold and are 5 centimeters in diameter. But Momo cries that finding such a small item would be impossible. Unfortunate since the balls are dense in spiritual energy and may attract other spirits and yokais. Turbo Granny says the spirits may use the ball to revive themselves, pissing off Momo as it's all Turbo Granny's fault for losing the balls, prompting the gang to return home. Seiko says she'll ask around for any lost balls, reminding Akarin to keep his new powers in check, only to cut to the next day, where Akarin's classmates ask Akarin if he is dating Momo. When Akarin says he isn't, the boys ask if Akarin can introduce them to Momo, seeing as she is their type. Realizing that the boys are spreading rumors about Momo, Akarin gets furious, suddenly transforming only to grab one of the boys by the collar. As the boys crumble in comparison to Akarin's strength, they beg to be let go, snapping Akarin out of his daze. Rushing to his table, Akarin tries calming down with some reading, only to realize Turbo Granny had snuck into his bag. Instantly running towards a secluded place, Akarin demands to know why Turbo Granny is at school with him. But Turbo Granny tries beckoning Akarin to allow her into his body, and in exchange, she will help him control his powers. Akarin says he won't be falling for any of Turbo Granny's scheme, suddenly stuffing the doll back into his bag as he hears a voice call out to him. But luckily, it's it's only Momo. Akarin tries telling Momo about Turbo Granny sneaking in his bag, but Akarin suddenly realizes how cute Momo is, beginning to run away, all whilst Momo chases after him. Alone, Turbo Granny is left to explore the school, all whilst Momo complains to her girlies about Akarin avoiding her. Miko reveals that Akarin had gotten into a fight defending Momo from possible rumors spreading about her, something that makes Momo blush. But at the same time, we see Arya passing through the school halls. Arya declares that her elegant self can brighten anyone's day. But Arya is still pissed about the day Momo had embarrassed her by dropping the bowl on her head. Plus, it's revealed that Arya herself is the source of all the nasty rumors around Momo. Strangely enough, Arya had seen a wing-like object appear from Momo, believing Momo to be a demon of some sort. Arya says it's fate that she has been given the eyes to see such things, taking out a golden ball only to promise to eradicate the world of all demons. Flashing back, Arya was heading home at night when a golden ball landed on her head. When she had picked it up, she saw a bright light flashing on a passing train. Frightened, she dropped it, and everything went back to normal, but when she picked it up again, she could see specks of bright lights, having been remnants of clash. At school, Arya thanks Tsubaim and Anzu for bringing her a Bible and a cross. But as her friends get tired of Arya's weird antics, Arya suddenly rushes to open a nearby window, demanding to know who the woman in the red dress is. Sadly, Arya's friend can't see anything, watching as Arya begins acting weird again, only to begin flirting with boys who notice her acting strange as well. With Turbo Granny watching everything transpire, we cut to the rooftop where Momo and Akarin have lunch, but Momo asks why Akarin is avoiding her gaze. Momo also demands to know why Turbo Granny is with them, preparing to have a brawl with the doll. But as Akarin holds back Turbo Granny, he utters that Turbo Granny had noticed a strange lady at their school. Turbo Granny says she was looking for the golden ball around the school, seeing as a human could have picked them up, and since humans may be attracted to shiny gold things, the person that picked it up will probably awaken their spiritual powers upon coming into contact with the dense magical ball. Sadly, having spiritual powers puts them at risk as spirits may attack them, something that alerts Momo and Akarin. In class, Arya continues to fondle the golden ball, wondering if she could defeat Momo's demonic powers alone. But as Arya checks on the lady in the red dress, she notes how it's getting ever so close to her. With the school day ending, we see Akarin meeting up with Momo, but out of nowhere Arya appears, asking to speak with Momo privately. Having no choice, Momo heads off with Arya, all whilst Turbo Granny tells Akarin that Arya is the one in possession of the golden ball. Being taken to an abandoned factory, Momo gets weirded out, demanding to know what Arya wants to speak about. But out of nowhere, Tsubaim and Anzu tackle Momo to the ground only to bind her arms. Donning her gear, Arya tries exorcising Momo, believing she is a demon, but her pathetic cross along with her holy prayers do nothing to Momo. Pissed, Momo uses her psychic powers to fling Tsubaim and Anzu aside, only for Arya to try exorcising Momo again, this time rubbing her golden ball on Momo, as she cries for the sacred ball to give her strength. With Momo ordering Arya to hand over Akarin's golden ball, we see Akarin arriving on the scene, seemingly fleeing away from something. At that moment, we see the red-dressed lady tackling Arya, muttering that it's been waiting so long for Arya to finally see her. With Arya suddenly remembering a memory of her as a child, Momo cries for Akarin to help Arya, prompting Akarin to transform, rushing down the spirit. Sadly, the spirit easily evades, taunting Akarin as he dashes towards the red-dressed lady. In mere moments, the spirit outmaneuvers Akarin, grabbing a hold of him only to swallow Akarin whole. Annoyed, Momo grabs hold of Akarin with her powers, but seeing as her hands are bound, Momo is unable to use her full powers and instead receives a devastating kick from the spirit. Swallowing Akarin whole, the spirit says it has waited 10 years to reunite with Arya, reminding Arya that it is her mommy, seeing as Arya had called it mommy in the past. Arya is disgusted by the demons pleading, suddenly all turning towards Momo as she appears from the rubble unharmed, surprised to see Turbo Granny is also unharmed. Turbo Granny takes out a phone she stole, declaring the spirit before them is acrobatic Silky. But as Arya cries she'll eradicate monsters like the tall lady before her, the spirit gets upset, gobbling down Arya whole as well. Infuriated, the tall spirit suddenly erupts, sending her hair towards Momo, only to ensnare her, dragging Momo into the air by her neck. When Momo curses at the spirit, the tall lady simply begins to spin, sending Momo flying through the air only to smash her into the ground. The tall lady gives Momo a chance to redeem herself, asking Momo to call it mommy. But when Momo refuses, the lady swallows up Momo whole. With only Turbo Granny left, Turbo Granny orders the spirit to spit out the kids. But before the spirit can disrespect Turbo Granny, the lady's body is set on fire, having been lit on fire from the inside out when Momo used Arya's cross-shaped lighter along with the spirit's hair as fuel. As the tall lady burns up, it ends up vomiting out our trio, suddenly transforming into a more grotesque monster. Crying, Silky demands to have Arya back, tossing several rails at the gang, but they manage to evade. Rushing through the factory, Akarin says Arya's unconscious body is holding them back, but when Momo says she has an idea, Momo is suddenly pulled away, having been caught in Silky's web-like trap. With Momo tossed aside and incapacitated, Silky locks onto Akarin, forcing him to continue through the factory, making use of his transformed body to lure Silky away from Momo. As Akarin prioritizes Arya's safety, he evades the tall lady's hair with some aerial maneuvers, but suddenly is struck down, forced to tank a kick from the spirit. Seeing Arya laying before it, Silky says she can be together with Arya if it consumes her, but as the monster reaches towards the unconscious girl, the monster suddenly halts in its place. Momo appears, stating that the hair Silky had sprung across the factory ended up tying around too many things and has bound Silky in place, but refusing to give up, Silky kicks down a nearby pillar to free up some space. Seeing an opening, Momo rushes to restrain Silky's legs with her powers, all whilst asking Akarin to slay the monster with his full throttle. Akarin cries that he doesn't know how to do such a thing, as his past full throttles was out of desperation. But as Silky rips out her own hair to set herself free, it blows away Momo's psychic hands, flinging its hair towards Momo. In an instant, Akarin transforms to protect Momo, spearheading a tackle that ends up blowing a hole through the factory along with Silky. But although Momo is amazed, Turbo Granny scolds Akarin for his pathetic use of his power. Seeing as Silky isn't a priority anymore, the gang remember to retrieve Akarin's golden ball, but as Momo celebrates a successful retrieval of Akarin's family jewels, Turbo Granny reveals that Arya is dead. Horrified, our duo confirm that Arya doesn't have a pulse, learning that any human swallowed by a spirit would perish, and it's actually lucky that Akarin and Momo themselves didn't pass away as well. Desperate, Momo tries resuscitating Arya's heart with her powers, all whilst Akarin gives Arya mouth-to-mouth. But when Turbo Granny tries calling the ambulance, they all notice Silky crying out to Arya. When Akarin prepares to attack the spirit once more, Silky offers to revive Arya by giving its life to her, but our duo refuse to believe the spirit. Silky states that she has good intentions, something Turbo Granny validates, finally convincing our duo to trust Silky. Although Momo is still skeptical, she hears Silky asking for her aura to be connected to Arya's. That way Arya's dim aura can be revived. Seeing no other option, Momo focuses in managing to connect both auras, but suddenly we get a peek into the tall lady's life. Having done anything for work, Silky was revealed to have a child that meant the world to her, forcing Silky to take on odd jobs just to make a living and raise the child. With time passing by, Silky's daughter grew fond of ballet, ultimately receiving a red dress that she treasured. Sadly, Silky had borrowed money and failed to repay her dues, leading her loan sharks to punish Silky and take her daughter as collateral. Pissed, Silky had frantically tried chasing after the loan sharks, but with her wounds getting the best of her, Silky passed away soon after. Flung into another world, Silky danced mindlessly at her cruel fate, feeling lifeless, especially since her reason for living was no longer with her. One day, while Silky was roaming around as a spirit, a young Arya had called out to her, mistaking Silky as her mother, but Arya's father reminded Arya that her mother had passed away. From that day onwards, Silky had claimed Arya to be the child she must protect, but in the present Arya finally awakens, all whilst Momo breaks into tears. Ocaran prepares to attack Silky, seeing Momo hurt, but Momo cries for Ocaran to chill out, allowing Silky to finally say her final piece. As Silky begins to crumble, it apologizes for hurting Arya, all whilst Momo hears that spirits that have no aura will be sent to the void and be deleted from their world, a cruel fate for Silky, who lived a tragic life. Hearing all of this, Arya questions her life, watching mindlessly as Silky wishes to spoil her child one last time, apologizing for being a terrible mother. Out of nowhere, Arya rushes to give Silky a hug, reassuring Silky that she did the best that she could and that Arya herself will shoulder the burden and remember Silky for the rest of her life, something that allows the spirit to finally pass on with a bit of closure. As the gang head home, they indulge in some somen noodles, all whilst Ocaran is amazed at the lineup of girls in front of him. Momo starts off by apologizing for dropping the bowl on Arya's head, but Momo demands Arya apologize to Ocaran for thinking so lightly of him. Arya clarifies that she hates Momo because she is a demon, annoying Momo as she tries to clear things up, but Arya points out how youthful Seiko is, plus Ocaran transformed into a demon as well. As the girls slurp down the noodles, they continue to bicker, but before Arya takes her leave, she wonders why Ocaran protected her when she was dead. Ocaran simply says it's human to protect others in need, something that makes Arya realize Ocaran is still human after all, running off as she feels taboo for falling for a demon like Ocaran. Comedically, the gang decide to play some baseball in order to reattach Ocaran's golden ball. But the question is, where is Ocaran's second golden ball? At school the next day, Momo hears that Ocaran doesn't have access to a computer to help with their search. But before Momo can schedule plans to meet during lunch or after school, Ocaran apologizes, seeing as he'll be busy all day. During lunch, Momo decides to eat with her girlfriends, finding it suspicious that Ocaran is busy all of a sudden. But as Momo heads to buy some juice, she wonders if she should check on Ocaran just in case. Out of the corner of her eye, she spots Ocaran on top of Arya. But as we flash back to a few minutes ago, we see Ocaran is busy because he wants to train his body for any future fights. Seiko had given Ocaran instructions to train his body, motivating Ocaran to train hard in order to protect Momo, but out of nowhere Arya had asked to speak with Ocaran. Arya cries that she loves Ocaran, reaching out only to prepare to kiss him. Reacting in time, Ocaran shoves Arya away, weirded out by Arya's sudden confession along with her awkward attitude. As the two begin to wrestle, Ocaran fears he has no right to be romantically involved with a popular girl. But Arya does admit that she has little experience when it comes to dating. Surprisingly, our duo end up tripping on each other, ending up with Ocaran on top of Arya, who welcomes Ocaran's advances. It was at that moment when Momo stumbled onto them, completely misunderstanding the situation as she stormed off, believing Ocaran was spending his day with another girl. With Ocaran left alone, Momo is seen depressed in her science class, completely bored whilst learning about a mantis shrimp's powerful punch. As for Ocaran, he admits to being selfish for hiding his workout sessions, and as a result, he says he'll earn Momo's trust by getting stronger. But out of nowhere, Ocaran's classmates disappear, all whilst water floods the floors. Heading outside, Ocaran sees Arya is still with him, both freaked out by the blacked-out windows. At the same time, Momo is seen alone as well, annoyed by the rising water levels on the ground. But Momo is more worried about Ocaran and his safety. Suddenly sensing something approaching, Momo hides, only to see a strange dinosaur roaming the hallways. When Momo tries to reposition herself to get a better look at the creature, she accidentally creates a ripple in the water she's standing in, signaling to the dinosaur her position. Locking on a Momo's position, the creature releases a beam breath attack, instantly shredding the area around it only to leave once the area has been decimated. Luckily, Momo is unharmed, having ducked below the beam. But cutting back to Ocaran, he reveals that he had experienced something similar before, having been caged in by stone walls, and the only way to escape is to defeat the boss. Arya is surprised to hear that aliens exist, but out of nowhere, a strange mantis shrimp monster appears before them, suddenly rushing our duo as it cries out for Chiquitita. Evading the mantis shrimp's attack, Akron had transformed to save Arya. But as Akron prepares to brawl with the mantis shrimp, he is suddenly pressed into the ground by some Serpoians using their telekinesis. Arya tries, ordering the aliens to vanish, but with the wave of their hands, the Serpoians knock Arya back, revealing that it was them who created the black veil over the school to only allow those with high spiritual power through. The Serpoians reveal that they are after Akron's powers, and they want to experiment on Akron to harness his curse, forcing Akron to give in as the Serpoian's psychic powers are seemingly preventing Akron from transforming. As the aliens raise Akron into the air, ready to experiment on him, some strange hair suddenly wrap around the aliens, followed by a torrential gust of wind revealed to be Arya transformed, having taken on Silky's ballet fighting style. Having knocked down 2 of the 3 Serpoians, Arya quickly covers her eyes, seeing as Akron is basically naked, but Arya turns around realizing a single Serpoian and the mantis shrimp are working together. As the shrimp attacks Arya, Arya chooses to ignore the shrimp, running along the wall only to target the lone Serpoian, but Arya is caught off guard when she is blown back by the alien's telekinesis. The shrimp is annoyed to have been caught in the crossfire, but as Arya makes note of the alien's powers, she continues to dance around the shrimp's advances. As Akron searches the classrooms for spare clothes, he gets blown back by the shrimp's attack, impressing Arya. But when the Serpoian launches another telekinetic blast, Arya simply hides behind the shrimp to evade. Arya wonders if the shrimp is in love with her, taunting the creature whilst avoiding its attacks. But retaliating, Arya fires off a roundhouse kick only to catch the creature with a direct uppercut kick, pinning the monster into the ceiling. When Arya turns to face the lone Serpoian, she is suddenly flung into the nearby wall, having underestimated the alien's powers. But having bought enough time, the Serpoians all reveal their true forms, all whilst the mantis shrimp seems to have fully recovered. Arya tries cursing at the aliens, but is blown through a wall when struck by the shrimp's punch. But as Arya writhes in pain, Akron suddenly calls out to them. Akron covers up his private parts, slowly waddling over to Arya's position only to transform whilst naked. Sadly, the Serpoians simultaneously pin Arya and Akron down with their telekinesis, completely negating their transformations. But seeing as the Serpoians can't move, they have the shrimp bash Akron's head in. Surpassing his limits, Akron manages to transform and headbutt the shrimp away, but it's revealed that Momo was the one that helped weaken the alien's telekinesis. Pissed to see there are Serpoians in front of her. With it being a 3-on-3 match, Akron and Arya transform ready to attack, but Momo gets flustered seeing Akron is still naked, all suddenly pinned down by the Serpoian's telekinesis. The Serpoians take the chance to wake up the mantis shrimp, artificially injecting the monster with power, only for the mantis shrimp to suddenly evolve before their eyes. In the blink of an eye, the shrimp pummels Arya and Akron with several punches, but before the duo can be knocked out, Momo comes to her senses, fighting off the Serpoian's telekinesis with her own psychic powers. Trying again, Akron and Arya transform, prompting Arya to lead with an axe kick onto the shrimp, but the shrimp blocks only to send Arya into the ceiling. As the shrimp fires a devastating punch onto Arya, Akron intercepts, rescuing Arya. Working together, Akron helps maneuver around the shrimp's speed, all whilst Arya nails the shrimp with several kicks. But this makes Momo jealous. As Momo loses focus, the Serpoians manage to pin our trio down, but out of nowhere the water level rises absurdly, suddenly drowning everyone. Although our trio are able to breach the surface, Momo realizes that the nearby walls and ceiling are all water as well. But suddenly the building's lights turn off. Sensing a disturbing creature swimming by them, Momo cries that they should find an escape route, but Akron states that the monster before them is called Nessie, something Arya adores about Akron. The Serpoians attempt to scold Nessie for not slaying Momo correctly, but Nessie suddenly slays one of them with its beam breath. As Akarin and Momo flee for dear life, Arya is suddenly struck from below, sent flying into the area of water that replaces the ceiling, all whilst the attacker is revealed to be the mantis shrimp who thrives underwater. Funnily enough, the shrimp still needs to breathe air. Worst of all, Akarin realizes that Turbo Granny's powers can't swim. As Momo and Akarin continue to swim to evade the shrimp's punches, Momo says she can't rescue Arya, seeing as the shrimp is in the way. When Akarin offers to distract the shrimp for Momo to retrieve Arya, Momo gets annoyed, accusing Akarin of only caring for Arya. Seeing as Momo is still angry about earlier, Akarin reveals that everything he's done is to impress Momo, flustering her as he pushes Akarin away. At that moment, our duo are struck by one another of the shrimp's punch, forcing Akarin to tackle Momo aside as they both gaze into each other's eyes in the water. Getting an idea, Momo propels Akarin towards a shrimp only to divert their course towards the ceiling to evade the shrimp's attacks. Having entered the ceiling, Momo grabs hold of Arya, all heading into a room where Momo manages to resuscitate Arya. Momo orders Arya to strip, seeing as their clothes are holding them back. But as we follow the mantis shrimp and the serpoians, they seem to be fleeing from Nessie, who seems to be slaying everything in its path, forcing the serpoians to prepare to merge with the others. As Arya and Momo ride Akarin, they all dive in the water to face the aliens. But upon realizing that the serpoians have merged with both Nessie and the mantis shrimp, our trio hurriedly evade the monster's beam attack. Breaching the surface for some air, the gang realize that the monster is absorbing water for its next beam attack, prompting the gang to agree to try and break the monster's neck to render the attack useless. Submerging once more, Arya takes charge by wrapping her hair around the monster's neck, choosing to dive towards the monster with her leg outstretched, but sadly the monster intercepts Arya with its fist, following with a flurry of attacks that stall long enough for it to unleash another beam attack. Racing against the beam, Momo and Akarin manage to rescue Arya, realizing that the monster has the beam attack and the shrimp's close quarter punches. As our trio flees from the monster, Momo realizes something, but before she can say anything, an explosion separates our trio. Momo is revealed to be the monster's main target, barely able to hold her breath whilst in the water. But as the monster throws out a punch, Momo suddenly removes the water in their surroundings. Momo knows that mantis shrimps aren't able to unleash their full power on land, seeing as the impact from their punch would shred their own bodies. A weakness Momo has used to have the monster tear away at its own body. As a last-ditch effort, the monster latches onto Momo, attempting to drown her whilst it charges up another beam attack. But Arya had reacted fast enough, latching onto the monster, all whilst giving Akarin a direct path towards Momo. In the blink of an eye, Akarin rushes and slays the monster, clinging onto Momo with his final breath of air, only for the surrounding area to return back to normal. Momo and Akarin are relieved to be back in the school, but realizing that they are naked and soaking wet, our trio flee the scene, all whilst the other students demand to know what is happening. Elsewhere, we see the school nurse, Ju, asking if our trio is being bullied, but sadly our trio utters nothing. Ju insists that they tell the truth, as she doesn't tolerate bullying, but as another teacher tells Ju she is receiving a phone call, Ju leaves our trio alone while she attends to other business. Both Momo and Arya begin to break down, seeing as their public image is ruined, but Akarin wonders why the aliens were after Turbo Granny's power. Momo asks how Arya was able to use Acro Silky's powers, reasoning that since the Tall Lady revived Arya, it would make sense she now shares the Tall Lady's powers. But Akarin states that Arya herself may also be a target, seeing as she has powers. Momo finds it strange that the aliens want Turbo Granny's yokai powers, but Akarin utters that it must be because the demons and aliens of Earth are fighting against the aliens invading their world. This also explains the reason for aliens needing to experiment on spiritual humans. But regardless, the girls continue to cry that everyone has seen them naked, all agreeing to blame the mess on Momo, who asked everyone to strip. Right on cue, Arya's friends enter the room to retrieve Arya, blaming the mess on Momo, but Momo could care less. Now alone, Momo demands the reason why Akaran was on top of Arya. But as Akaran mutters that he was secretly trying to get stronger to impress Momo, Momo can't help but admire Akaran. Hearing that Akaran was getting stronger for her sake, Momo begins to tease Akaran. But before Akaran can leave, our lovebirds exchange some flirty glances. Out of nowhere, Miko and Yuko appear asking to know why Momo was naked on Akaran. But when Momo tries explaining things, the girls only get more confused. Getting to the bottom of things, Miko deduces that there is a love triangle between Arya, Akaran, and Momo, and Akaran seems to be the one the girls are fighting over. In class, Arya's classmates offer to help Arya with any trouble she is facing, something Arya smirks about seeing as her popularity hasn't diminished whatsoever. But suddenly Arya's classmates blame Momo for embarrassing Arya. Hearing her classmates scheming horrible things to further punish Momo, Arya admits to being the one that spread the heinous rumors about Momo to begin with, refusing to tolerate any further harassment of Momo. As Arya marches through the school halls, she sits alone wondering why she stood up for her sworn enemy. But out of nowhere, Momo appears checking in on her. Momo asks how Arya is doing, but Arya tries putting up a wall between them, demanding that Momo leave her alone. Momo deduces that Arya didn't add any more fuel to her already bad image. But before Arya can say another word, the girls notice the mantis shrimp is still alive, both preparing to engage the creature. Surprisingly, the monster suddenly collapses, crying out to its baby, Chiquititia. Waking up, the shrimp realizes it's been patched up, but Seiko and our trio confront the monster, wondering if the shrimp is an alien or a Japanese kappa. As the shrimp takes a battle stance, it realizes it has been served some curry, immediately kneeling down as it cries tears of gratitude to have been served a loving meal. With the gang buying some sushi, they all start fighting over who gets what, all pairing up with Turbo Granny brawling with Akaran, Seiko taking on the shrimp, Momo and Arya arguing with each other. Finishing up the meal, the shrimp reveals that his son is very ill, and if his son doesn't receive blood every day, he'll pass away just like the shrimp's wife did. The shrimp's manner of speech is quite ambiguous, but the gang hear that the shrimp's homeland is war-torn, so he had to leave to a foreign land to earn some extra currency. The shrimp begins blaming himself for his son's condition, and worst of all, there is nothing he can do about it, suddenly shedding some tears. Akaran asks what he can do to help, wondering if he can hand over his private parts to help the shrimp get paid, and then the gang can simply attack and retrieve his private parts once the shrimp's family is taken care of. Momo refuses to allow Akaran to be put in danger, but Arya sides with Akaran's selfless offer, prompting both girls to begin arguing. The shrimp says he must get a proper job and not inconvenience our trio further, promising to never harm our trio, but before the mantis shrimp can leave, Seiko says the shrimp's blood stinks. With Seiko sniffing at the bandages wrapping the shrimp, Seiko takes out some milk, asking the shrimp to taste it. But surprisingly, the shrimp utters that the milk is equivalent to the blood that runs through their body. Seiko reveals that the mantis shrimp's blood is similar to cow's milk. And seeing as the shrimp's issue can be resolved with milk, Seiko says she'll give the shrimp a cow to give it an infinite source of blood for his sick child. As the shrimp beams up a cow, he promises to repay the favor in the future, instantly disappearing from the skies. Back inside, our trio begs Seiko to buy them new school uniforms, but Seiko refuses. Momo says they are out of money and must resort to begging, but Akaran points out it is the third time Seiko had bought them a replacement uniform. Seiko orders Momo to do an impersonation of Hiroshi Abe the comedian if she wants her uniform, forced to keep up the act as she answers the doorbell. But Momo suddenly greets Jean and Juji, Momo's childhood friend and first love. Akaran is quite intimidated by Jin's handsome figure, but out of nowhere Jean bursts out laughing, weirding everyone out with his sporadic behavior. As Seiko shows Jean to his room, Seiko reveals that Jean will be living with Momo from today forth. But Momo refuses to live with a boy, all whilst Arya accuses Momo of gathering demonic allies. Seeing as it's getting late, Arya heads home, leaving Akaran to bid farewell as well. But before he leaves, he shyly wishes to see Momo tomorrow at school, something that pleases Momo. Back in the house, Jean scoffs down Seiko's cooking, all while Seiko tells Momo that Jean is living with them since Jin's parents have been hospitalized. As Jean and Momo wash the dishes, Jean takes the chance to apologize for making fun of Momo when they were younger, telling Momo he can see ghosts now. Momo asks if Jean had come into contact with any golden balls, but Jean denies such a thing, telling Momo that after they went their separate ways in middle school, Jean and his family wound up moving out into a house surrounded by a forest. Immediately, Jean felt something was strange with his new home, and when Jean told his family, they laughed it off, leading to one fateful night when the entity haunting him showed itself to Jean. Ever since then, his parents' health had gotten worse, leading Jean to rally together 5 exorcists that could solve his issue, but sadly 3 of the 5 had taken their own lives soon after facing the entity. As a last resort, Jean is asked if Seiko could help him, something Momo reasons was the right thing to do. Jean once again deeply apologizes for making fun of Momo when they were younger, but suddenly Seiko reminds the pair that her powers only work in Kamigo City, meaning Momo herself will have to deal with the issue, and Seiko suspects the golden ball must be behind this somehow. At school the next day, Jean celebrates seeing as he's transferred schools, immediately captivating the girls in his class. Although Jean's parents are hospitalized, it doesn't stop Jean from asking for a girl's phone number, even dancing through the class as he's seated next to Momo and her friends. Unfortunately, Miko and Yuko begin falling for Jean as well, but Jean clarifies to everyone that he and Momo are childhood friends living together, something that Momo's friends forbid, seeing as Momo and Akarin are already a thing. Following Akarin, he is completely lost in thought, agitated at the thought of Jean re-entering Momo's life and being all chummy with her. Akarin fears Momo will stop talking to him if she starts dating Jean, refusing such a reality as he strives to grow stronger. But suddenly Momo appears to check on Akarin. As Momo sits down for her lunch, she offers to feed Akarin since his hands are tied up, but sadly Jean joins them, offering Momo her favorite yogurt drink. Seeing Momo drawn towards Jean, Akarin can't bear the sight of the girl he likes being taken away from him, choosing to leave the scene. But as he turns a corner, he suddenly notices a mannequin bolting towards him. Crying out for Momo, Akarin begins fleeing from the mannequin, but the mannequin easily overtakes Akarin, now charging towards Momo. Momo prepares to restrain the mannequin, but suddenly Jean tackles her to the ground, allowing the mannequin to leap over them, but Momo suddenly spots a golden ball attached to the mannequin. Seeing as Jean is refusing to let go of her, Momo has no choice but to grab hold of the mannequin with her powers, ultimately being dragged along with the mannequin, all whilst Akarin runs after them. Seeing as the mannequin has left the school, Akarin transforms, preparing to race after them, managing to catch up to the mannequin. When Momo tries reaching out to Akarin, the mannequin leaps onto a building, giving Momo a chance to catch the mannequin on a power line, but the mannequin's momentum shreds the power line. With Momo suddenly seeing a bus heading their way, Akarin manages to pull Momo to safety, grabbing hold of her only to fling her and Jean onto his back. Still chasing after the mannequin, Akarin grounds himself, allowing Momo to pull the mannequin towards them, but the mannequin puts up a good fight, refusing to give up. As the mannequin breaks apart, it manages to escape capture, only to reassemble itself, all whilst continuing to run away. Having lost sight of the mannequin, Akarin reverts back to his human form, all watching as Momo smacks her hands together, managing to guide our trio toward the junkyard. Sneaking inside, the gang spot the mannequin sprawled out on the ground, leading Momo to reveal she had retrieved the mannequin's heart when it split apart, and she had been punching the heart to locate the mannequin's screams. Momo demands to have Akarin's golden ball back in exchange for the mannequin's heart, but suddenly a voice calls to Teru, the mannequin before them. Freaking out, Teru rushes onto the pile of junk nearby, searching around for the voice only to unearth another mannequin he calls Hannah. Teru cries that he'll do anything to be together with Hannah, something that resonates with Akarin, as he hears Teru confessing his deepest desires to spend the rest of his life with her. Returning home, our trio begged to have Hannah stay at Seiko's home, and as for Teru, he promises to not act up as long as Hannah is safe. Momo also mentions how the gold ball she saw on Teru was simply a Christmas ornament. But as Momo prepares to set the table for dinner, Akron can't help but get jealous seeing how flirty Jean is to Momo. Remembering how Teru spilled his heart out to Hannah, Akron cries he won't lose Momo to Jean, but Seiko orders the boys to keep it down. Seiko reminds Momo that she'll be heading to Jin's house this weekend, leading Momo to reveal that Jean needs his house exorcised and is the reason he is here in the first place. With Akron agreeing to come along, we cut to the school where we see some school kids planning on messing with a Ouija board, but out of nowhere, Teru sprints past them, leaping through a window. Wanting to see Hannah, Teru boards a train, but as he dreams of visiting his loved one, he is accidentally run over by a truck. Following Momo, she is seen waiting outside with Hannah for Teru's arrival. But as time passes by, Momo falls asleep outside beside Hannah. As the sun begins to rise, Teru finally arrives, apologizing for visiting so late. But at the same time, we see Jean on edge, unable to sleep due to the mysterious entity haunting him. With the big day arriving, our trio board a train, passing time by playing Old Maid, but Akron seems to be losing constantly. Jean tries cheering Akron up with some snacks, but Akron simply gets more depressed seeing Momo and Jean reminisce about their childhood, making Akron feel pathetic as he sees his own jealous reflection in the window. Akron tries distracting himself by uttering that he needs to retrieve his golden ball no matter what, but seeing as Jean and Momo are non-stop chatting, Akron interrupts in by educating the two on the Tsukinoko. Coincidentally, Jean utters that his village as a legend revolving around the Tsukinoko shrine, where the villagers worshipped a great serpent for 200 years. Seeing as Jean has stolen his spotlight, Akron tries bringing up the other myths to intrigue Momo. But accidentally, Akron starts to hit off with Jean as he is the second person to take a liking to the paranormal, just like Momo. Jean asks if he can be friends with Akron. Akron says he doesn't deserve any friends since he is quite awkward. But as the trio leave the train, they enter a hot spring district where Jin's father works. Seeing as his father researches volcanoes in a nearby college, Jin's family had to move out to the hot spring town, and rumor has it that the nearby volcano erupted 200 years ago. As Jin guides the duo up some stairs, they're forced to climb several hundred flights of stairs, finally making it to Jin's home exhausted. At first glance, Momo can't detect any abnormal spirits nearby. But as the trio enter the home, we see the villagers of the hot spring town spying on them with their maniacal grins. Looking around the house, neither Momo nor Akron find anything off about Jin's home, beginning to doubt Jin's story about strange occurrences in his home. But Momo does mention how the ghost could be hiding at the moment. Momo suspects the enemy has a weak spiritual presence, meaning it'll be easy to defeat them, exciting Jean. Jean rushes off to fetch some refreshments for our duo, all whilst Momo decides to visit the hot springs, promising to return by sundown. Seeing as the boys are alone, Jean asks to teach Akron soccer, showing off the basics to dribble and kick, but Akron gets embarrassed seeing how pathetic he is. Akron wonders if he can impress Momo with his new soccer skills by the time she gets back. But as Akron continues to train with Jean, Jean suddenly asks if Akron loves Momo. Following Momo, she indulges in the hot spring, having intentionally left the boys alone, seeing as Jean is Akron's first male friend. Back with Akron, he cries that he loves Momo as a friend, but when he hears Jean say he loves Momo's eyes and personality, the boys begin to argue who loves Momo more. When Jean tries bringing up his childhood friend's status to win the argument, Akron suddenly remembers his kiss with Momo, quietly accepting victory as we cut back to Momo, who decides to wrap up her bath. Momo says it's unfortunate that the hot spring is walled off, wanted to see the scenery whilst bathing, but out of nowhere, Julian Kitu, Jamanuel Kido, Juichi Kyo, Jihiko Kitu, and Jujina Kido all enter the mixed-gender hot spring, ready to join Momo. As Akron and Jean continue to wrestle and fight over Momo's honor, they suddenly stop, having noticed a strange room appear next to Jin's home. But as this happens, the five men enter the bath, all approaching Momo. Jean and Akron inspect the wall, separating the house and the extra room. But upon realizing it's hollow, Jean reasons they should have a closer look. Jean takes charge by smashing a hole in the wall, shocked to see hundreds of talismans crammed inside the wall. But as we cut back to Momo, we see the 5 adults swimming towards her. Momo wonders if she can deal with them all at once. But before Momo can activate her psychic powers, she is tackled and pinned down below the hot spring waters. Running out of breath, Momo lets loose a burst of psychic powers, managing to smack the attacker with the snake head of the nearby water dispenser. Within a few seconds, the hot springs dispenser begins to overflow, distracting the men long enough for Momo to leave the bath, all whilst the surrounding infrastructure of the hot spring begins falling on the men. Before Momo can flee the scene, one of the men manages to catch up to her, but luckily the remaining walls of the hot spring perfectly collapse on the man, revealing a gorgeous view of the hot spring village. In the corner of her eyes, Momo spots Turbo Granny bathing in the hot spring, learning that she had tagged along when she heard the gang was visiting a hot spring village. Momo fears that she'll have to pay for the damages, quickly hiding to change in her clothes, all while several Chamber of Commerce workers enter the hot spring, accusing the creepy men of destroying everything. Momo hears that the men who attacked her are from the Keto family, watching as the creepy men are hunted by the commerce workers. Plus, Momo suspects that Turbo Granny had helped her earlier. As the duo head home, Momo asks what Turbo Granny thinks about Jin's home, but Turbo Granny doesn't like the vibe of the home, declaring that it soaked up too much blood. Back with the boys, they wonder if they should enter the strange room, but Akron reasons they should wait for Momo to return. Upon hearing someone at the door, Akron rushes to answer, only to spot Naki, Juriko, Juju, Junko, and Jitimu strangely staring at them. Funnily enough, Jean invites them in for snacks, all gossiping how the town is run by them, and those who don't listen need to be punished. Naki orders Jean to eat some snacks with them, reminding Jean that he doesn't pay rent, so he should listen to her, especially since Jin's parents are so weak. Akron hears that Jin's home is a rental, and seeing as his parents are hospitalized, the kiddo ladies have been allowing him to stay for free. Jean asks Akron to not mention the hole in the wall, and when Naki demands to know why Jean left all of a sudden, Jean cries that he was simply visiting Akron, his new friend, and now he's returned to show Akron his home. Naki asks if Jean is still trying to hire spirit mediums, something that pisses off the other ladies. But Jean says a shy boy like Akron could never be a spirit medium. Taking out a shotgun, Naki reminds Jean that she has a license to hunt, recounting a time when she accidentally shot someone, but Jean says Naki shouldn't joke about such things. Right on cue, Officer Tsuru appears, strangely flinching when Naki glares at him. Following Tsuru are the 5 creepy men from earlier, now all dressed up, revealing that it was thanks to Tsuru that they weren't punished after being captured. As the men join the ladies, we see Juichi asking what Jin's been up to, demanding that Jean tell him the truth. Jean reassures Juichi that he was picking up a friend for a home visit, but Juichi suddenly locks onto Akron, asking Akron what Jin's favorite soccer team is. Juichi says a friend of Jean would surely know, and with the situation tense, Akron says it's Saint-Germain, successfully clearing himself of all suspicion. Jean is surprised Akron knew the answer, but Akron says the poster he put up to hide the hole has the answer. When the ladies ask when Jin's lady friend is coming back, Jean tries playing dumb, but Naki says she knows Jean is lying. Cutting over to Momo, she is seen visiting a Tsukinoko shrine, but is caught off guard seeing a strange man balancing on his head. Spotting Momo, Manjiro apologizes for the awkward sight, inviting her to see the shrine. Upon entering, Momo is disappointed to see the dried-out remains of a snake, especially since there were tales of a mythical snake guarding the village. The legend says that the snake lived in the nearby volcano and caused it to erupt everything it got hungry. So the villagers had offered up a child every year for the past 200 years to quell the snake's hunger. And in exchange, the volcano remained dormant, and the village was allowed to enjoy the hot springs. Manjiro says nowadays, erecting a shrine to pray to the snake is enough. And Tsukinoko was a name given to the snake to attract more tourists. But Manjiro does mention how people in the past would continue to uphold the sacrifices in fear of the volcano erupting again. As Momo heads back to Jin's home, she excitedly calls out to the boys, but is horrified to see Akarin and Jean have been knocked out, all whilst Naki declares that their last offering has arrived. As the men attack Momo, she starts off by firing off a kick, knocking out one of the men, only to knee another with the help of her psychic abilities. Sadly, Momo is pushed into a devastating punch, barely able to block it with a barrier, quickly recovering and knocking down another by tossing a table at them. Caught off guard, Momo is restrained from behind, receiving a brutal head, but that blurs her vision. Luckily, Turbo Granny scares off the man, causing him to bump his head, but Momo is more curious who these people are. Momo demands that everyone leave this house, but out of nowhere, Naki leaps towards Momo with a flying kick, blowing her back. As Naki chases after Momo with some insane movement, she is able to maneuver around the flying obstacles Momo sends her way, only to appear in front of Momo, comboing her with various strikes. To top things off, Naki smashes Momo through the talisman-filled room, wondering how Momo can use psychic abilities. Momo is weirded out by the strange room, piquing Naki's attention to see a talking cat with Momo, all whilst revealing that the Kiddu family has been protecting the village for generations. Momo demands that the strange people leave Jin's home, but Naki declares it's thanks to the Kiddu family that their village hasn't been burnt to a crisp, and this is because they've been upholding the tradition of sacrifices to the serpent god. Momo is disgusted by what she is hearing, and to make things worse, Naki reveals that Jin's home was the original location for when their ancestors sacrificed people. Naki says it's perfect that they have 3 offerings, prompting the room to strangely begin to morph as it begins swallowing Momo whole, mimicking sand to absorb Momo. Momo quickly makes use of her psychic abilities to pull herself out of the room, but Naki and the others guard the exit, forcing Momo back into the room as they declare Momo needs to be sacrificed. Trapped and seeing no way out, Momo cries for Turbo Granny to do something. But luckily, Jean and Akarin have awoken, managing to pin down Naki and several others with a couch. When Akarin calls out to Momo, Momo tries reaching out to Akarin, but out of nowhere the room collapses, sending everyone tumbling into the abyss below. Barely surviving the fall, the gang wonder how they'll escape. Plus, they're confused at the various houses in the pit with them. Hearing Jean calling for help, Momo quickly uses her powers to reach out to Jean before he falls. But having missed her timing, Jean helplessly slips and falls. Strangely, Jean falls onto something that softens his fall, awakening the horrifying Serpent Lord. Immediately, Naki and the Kidda family get into formation to greet the serpent, offering up our trio as sacrifices, but Turbo Granny points out how the serpent is a Karagari. Akarin remembers a Karagari to be a Mongolian deathworm, a giant man-eating earthworm that lives in the Gobi Desert. And this was the creature the Kiddus have been worshipping for the past 200 years. Momo warns the Kiddus to not agitate the giant worm, but ignoring the kids' pleads, the worm ultimately attacks the Kiddus. Realizing they don't stand a chance against such a creature, our trio decide to hide in a building for now. But as they enter a house, Jean suddenly spots Momo and Akarin writhing in pain. At that moment, Akarin begins to transform, unable to hold back his instincts as he crawls towards Jean. With Akarin all over him, Jean uses all his strength to wrestle Akarin off him, even tanking a slap as he watches Akarin continue to cry out in pain. Throwing Akarin around, Jean manages to stop Akarin from hurting himself, suddenly spotting the ground below him begin to rumble. Picking up Momo and Akarin, Jean manages to move them aside as the worm launches through the house, giving Jean an idea as he sees the worm is reacting to the vibrations in the house and not their voices. Jean is forced to stop Akarin from hurting himself once more. And as Akarin begs for someone to end his suffering, Jean suddenly remembers the moment when he found his parents attempting to hang themselves, with the last words also begging for their lives to be taken. Jean wonders what could be causing such a visceral reaction, suddenly watching as Momo plunges a glass shard into her belly, but luckily Turbo Granny is stabbed instead. Turbo Granny instructs Jean to tie Akarin up, following up by restraining Momo, only to hear from Turbo Granny that the worm is emitting psychic waves that force people to take their own lives. Jean wonders why he isn't being affected, but before Turbo Granny can explain, Momo tries filing glass shards at herself, forcing Jean to leap in the way of the projectiles. Flung into another room, Jean helplessly glances up at the worm, staring off into the eye of the storm. Jean notices Momo trying to injure herself once more, stealing his resolve as he reacts fast enough to tank the glass shard, only to hoist everyone onto his shoulders. As Jean rushes through the home, he evades the worm's advances, all whilst descending through the house. Making it out of the house and onto some footing, Jean accidentally trips down some stairs, pissed at himself for being so weak. Seeing Akarin and Momo prepare to jump, Jean rushes to secure them, only to notice the worm towering over them. As the worm creeps ever so close to Jean, a strange entity makes their presence known, suddenly appearing before the worm. Seeing this strangely slouched entity, Jean says he recognizes it, surprised to see that Akarin and Momo are back to their senses. The trio wonder what the creature is before them, suddenly weirded out when the creature dislocates its head to face them, but Turbo Granny cries for the trio to not look at Evil Eye. Turbo Granny says Evil Eye can make anyone go insane and want to harm themselves with a single gaze, the same ability as the worm's psychic waves, and it seems Evil Eye and the worm are canceling each other out. Seeing an opening, Akarin transforms and goes full throttle, instantly decapitating the worm's head, but it manages to sprout another head. As the worm chases after the gang, we see Evil Eye floating alongside Jean, suddenly taking the chance to force Jean to lock eyes with it. Flashing back, we see a few kids dancing and playing together, all whilst a pale kid with purple eyes watches from behind bars. In the coming days, the white-haired kid would mimic the other kids' dances, ultimately collapsing as he became more malnourished. It's revealed that the white-haired kid was actually one of the human sacrifices that were fed to the serpent by the Kiddu family, ultimately tied up and burnt to a crisp, but his final wish being to someday play with other kids. Not too long after, the kid was given a second chance at life, weirdly appearing before families, but only the children of the family could see him. After every encounter, the parents of the child would pass away, something that would happen regularly. When the kid had tried to calm the children with the dancing he had learnt, strange vibrations would occur from beneath him, and there was nothing he could do as the parents took their lives regardless. In one specific case, the white-haired kid had learnt that the Kiddu family would go as far as to tie up the children and bury them alongside their homes as sacrifices, all whilst the white-haired kid watched on helplessly. Seeing the helpless children unable to escape their fates, the white-haired kid eventually grew to despise the Kiddu family, taking on the name Evil Eye. But in the present, Evil Eye attempts to take over Jin's body. Luckily, Momo snaps Jin back to reality, attempting to pull Evil Eye off him, all whilst Akarin keeps the worm busy. Jin cries that Evil Eye isn't a bad person, suddenly rushing deeper and deeper into the pit, crying that he'll set the boy free. Passing by ancient-looking homes, Jin reaches the bottom of the pit only to open up the doors, sealing Evil Eye's corpse. Having chased after Jin, Momo asks what Jin is doing, but Jin can only feel sorry for the poor boy, grateful that Evil Eye was protecting him all this time. Turbo Granny cries that Evil Eye is a yokai with bad intentions, but Jin seems to have already accepted Evil Eye as his ally. All suddenly freezing as Momo says she hears something. From above the pit, we see the worm suddenly infuse itself with electricity, managing to electrocute Momo and Jin only to begin drowning our duo in a strange substance that has been produced from the worm's mouth. Momo is disgusted by the sticky substance, wondering where Akarin could be, but it seems Akarin has been paralyzed. Momo cries that they need to escape, preparing to use her psychic abilities to flee the room, but Jin has strangely been entranced by Evil Eye's corpse. Forced into a hypnotic state, Jin is flung back to the moment when Evil Eye is locked up. Jin apologizes for the poor boy situation. Hearing that Evil Eye wants to play together, Jin gladly dances and agrees to play for eternity with the boy, something Evil Eye was waiting for as it finalizes its pact with Jin. In the present, Jin cries out in agony, all whilst Turbo Granny scolds Jin for trusting the Evil Eye. With our duo being electrocuted once more, Momo notices the worm has appeared before them, unable to move as the strange substance is binding them to the floor. Seeing as Jean is unconscious, Momo helplessly watches as the worm dives towards them, but out of nowhere, Jean throws out a devastating punch that knocks the worm back. Following up, Jean charges up a torrential kick, completely blowing the worm out of the pit and ripping apart its head. As Momo lays eyes on Jean, we see Jean swelling with dark power, revealed to be Evil Eye who has taken over Jin's body. Evil Eye declares they'll slay all humans, and in the blink of an eye, Evil Eye blows Momo in a nearby wall with a punch, only to pin her against the wall with his leg. Evil Eye is intrigued at Momo's powers, taunting Turbo Granny as he mocks Turbo Granny for being so weak, but Momo cries for Jean to wake up. Evil Eye says Jin's body is now theirs, and upon detecting the worm attempting to electrocute them, Evil Eye erects a perfect barrier to halt the attack. Evil Eye begins chanting something strange, managing to conjure together the dark energy from the deceased souls in the pit, only to compress the dark energy into a ball. With a single kick, Evil Eye sends the dense energy ball flying through the worm's head, and with each successive kick, the worm squirms and cries out in pain. Evil Eye is annoyed the worm has burrowed away to escape its wrath, allowing Momo to catch her breath temporarily, only for Turbo Granny to remind Momo that Jean is a genius, something Seiko knew all along. Jean apparently has an abnormal amount of spiritual power, and when combined with Jin's physical prowess, Turbo Granny declares Jean is the perfect vessel for anyone to possess. Momo says Jean wasn't always like this. Realizing that Jean awakened quite late, just like Momo did, and seeing as she'll now need to take on Evil Eye herself, Momo braces for the worst. As Evil Eye sends its dense energy ball towards Momo, she is forced to guard herself with her powers, but this leaves her wide open for a sneak attack from behind. Struck and flung into a nearby wall, Momo is forced to watch as Evil Eye kicks the ball directly at her, but right on cue Ocarin makes his grand entrance. Ocarin is pissed that Evil Eye hurt Momo, declaring he'll have to pay Evil Eye back, all whilst perfectly matching Evil Eye's strength. As Ocarin stops Evil Eye from pelting the ball at Momo, Evil Eye instead chooses to detonate the ball and blow Ocarin back, only to charge up another kick that forces Ocarin to evade with Momo. Evil Eye demands to know why a fellow yokai is helping a human, but refusing to listen, Ocarin flees the room with Momo on his back. As Evil Eye's energy ball tracks down Ocarin, we see Momo and Ocarin working together to ascend a pit. With Evil Eye amping up his attacks, our duo eventually manages to make it away from Evil Eye, but their attention is drawn to a strange spout that has appeared on the cave's walls. Ocarin reverts to his human form and recognizes it to be the worm's doing, as it intends to hide in the dirt and fill the cave with poison, annoying Momo, seeing as their only way out is too high up. Ocarin remembers that earthworms are highly sensitive to sunlight, and seeing as they need to escape as soon as possible, Ocarin says Momo will escape first and return with a rope to rescue him. Momo understands that Jean can't be rescued at the moment, so she promises to return and save the boys, and with our lovebirds holding hands, Ocarin transforms, ready to help Momo escape the pit. Asked to sit on a chair, Ocarin says he'll propel Momo up whilst Momo herself uses her psychic powers to boost her further towards the exit, and before Momo can suggest an alternative plan, Ocarin sends Momo flying. With her psychic powers, Momo manages to soar towards the exit, only to barely grasp onto the exit hole. As Momo pulls herself up, we see Evil Eye appear before Ocarin, prompting Ocarin to prepare himself for the brawl of his life. With Momo scanning Jin's apartment for some rope, she chooses to rip apart some curtains to create a makeshift rope, but sadly, it's still too short. Racking her brain for a way to stop the worm's poison and defeat it, Momo suddenly remembers a time when Jean and her younger self would play with worms. Seeing as she doesn't have her phone with her, Momo quickly gathers all the paper around her only to set them on fire. And within a few minutes, Momo is revealed to have set Jin's house ablaze, using the fire to cry out for help. Back with Ocarin, we see him weaving through various houses to escape Evil Eye, But Evil Eye monstrously pursues Akron with its energy ball, and to make things worse, Evil Eye himself chooses to physically engage with Akron. Every so often, Akron manages to tackle and stall Evil Eye. But as the fight draws on, Evil Eye succeeds in pummeling Akron with his energy ball, forcing Akron to remain on the defensive. Evil Eye is excited to try out its new body on Akron, but out of nowhere, Evil Eye begins to bleed from its nose, uttering that the worm's poison is harming its body too much. Needing to end their brawl quickly, Evil Eye sends its energy ball after Akron, and before it collides with Akron, Evil Eye converts the ball into a mini house that cages Akron in place. As Akron desperately tries breaking free, he suddenly hears the cries of the souls that have been used to create the walls of the cage he is in, ultimately allowing Evil Eye to slowly approach Akron, and it seems Akron has nowhere else to run. Although Akron manages to slip one of Evil Eye's punches, Evil Eye lands a devastating knee, followed by a flurry of attacks that grind and pound Akron to the nearby wall. Evil Eye cries that he'll slay Momo after he's finished with Akron, but having heard enough, Akron declares that Evil Eye was wrong to harm Momo and steal Jin's body as well. As Akron slips Evil Eye's advance, he charges up a powerful uppercut that rocks Evil Eye. Choosing to go full throttle, Akron turns the tables and begins pinning Evil Eye to the walls with hundreds of punches, and before Evil Eye can counter, Akron simply continues his onslaught. Punch after punch, the impact from Akron's attacks ends up shattering the cursed cage around him, only for Evil Eye to be blown back. As Evil Eye lays limp on the ground, Akron says he hasn't felt this pissed in a while, and as Akron himself collapses from exhaustion, he musters up his remaining strength to force his body to move. Seeing as he needs to get closer to the exit for when Momo comes to rescue him, Akron chooses to drag Jin's unconscious body with him, all whilst Turbo Granny is seen fighting for their life, having been rooted to the floor by the worm's sticky fluid. As Turbo Granny cries out for help, we see Akron heroically arrive to rescue the poor cat, and with Turbo Granny grateful to see someone come rescuing her, Akron rushes to retrieve some planks. Placing the planks above the sticky liquid, Akron begins pulling Turbo Granny away from the sticky floor, only to comedically slip and fall into the sticky substance. Turbo Granny scolds Akron for being so clumsy, but Akron says he can't transform, seeing as he already went full throttle twice, desperately calling out to Momo to rescue them. On the surface, Momo is alerted by Akron's voice, only to demand that the firefighters and police help the people inside Jin's house. Strangely, Officer Tsuru refuses to allow Momo nor anyone else from re-entering the house, and as Tsuru asks for Momo to be dragged away, we suddenly notice the floor beneath them begin to rumble. Right on cue, the earthworm is seen rearing its head as the entirety of its body is seen fleeing from the ground, and as the evening sun begins to harm the worm, Momo cries that everything is going according to plan. In the past, Jin had told Momo that worms breathe through their skin, and after a rainy day, worms escape to the surface to breathe since the soil is too damp for them to survive. As the worm squirms and writhes in agony, it drags its body behind what remains of Jin's house, but Momo refuses to allow the worm to escape. Choosing to use her powers to rail the nearby fire truck into the house, Momo continues to expose the worm to sun, and within a few minutes the worm's body begins to puff up and disintegrates. Becoming all stiff and finally falling over, Momo checks to see if the worm is still alive, but out of nowhere the worm barfs up the entirety of its insides. Surprisingly, Naki and the other kiddos seem to be barely alive, and before Momo can leave to help Akron escape, the nearby volcano suddenly erupts. As ash and soot scatter across the skies, the nearby townspeople are instructed to evacuate, all whilst Naki says she was right to have sacrificed so many people all along. Momo is still in disbelief that the legend about the Serpent Lord was true, and as Naki demands to know how Momo will rectify things, Momo realizes something strange. Seeing as earthworms can't exist in the sun, Momo says the legend about the mighty earthworm rising to the heavens is actually about the hot spring fountain. Momo says in the past the volcano was destined to erupt no matter what, and it's unfortunate that the legend egged on the Kiddo family to continue such a horrific tradition. As Momo picks up the rear section of the earthworm corpse, she chooses to toss it off the mountain, only to run after the corpse, all whilst the kiddos pursue Momo as their next human sacrifice. With Momo dragging the worm through town, she manages to reach the town's hot spring, choosing to plug up the broken water fountain with the corpse. Momo says the magma flowing from the volcano will be the thing she needs to deal with next. And seeing as the corpse of the worm can be used like a hose, Momo raises up the head of the earthworm only to allow the hot spring's water to be fed through its mouth. As the devastating ooze of magma begins melting away the surrounding scenery, Momo puts the worm to work by having it spray the magma with its sticky bodily fluid, a solution that puts out the flames. Sadly, the magma is spewing out too rapidly for Momo to deal with. And to make things worse, Naki kicks Momo from behind, having caught up. As the Kittus surround Momo, they declare they'll sacrifice Momo to their new volcano god. But before they can swarm Momo, Manjiro appears, fending them off. Manjiro reveals that Seiko is actually his master, having been instructed to help protect Momo by Seiko herself. Whilst Manjiro fends off the Kittus, we see Momo heaving the earthworm's corpse towards the magma, only to desperately put out the spreading flames. Out of nowhere, a projectile begins shredding the worm's corpse, and as Evil Eye makes his grand entrance, we see Evil Eye lock onto Naki and the Kittus. Naki breaks one of her arms to parry Evil Eye's kick, but before Evil Eye can put Naki down, Momo rescues Naki by pulling her to safety with her powers. Up next, Manjiro tries exchanging with Evil Eye, but the yokai's sheer strength forces Momo to drag Manjiro away, all whilst Momo demands to know where Akarin is. Evil Eye refuses to answer, forcing our trio to work together to take down the being. But as Evil Eye rushes the gang, they're forced to duck, seeing Evil Eye blasting them with a beam. Having closed the gap, Evil Eye throws an axe kick at Momo, but luckily Manjiro bumps her to safety. Sneaking up, Naki tries attacking from Evil Eye's blind spot, but this doesn't faze him, signaling Momo to pull Naki away, only for Manjiro to rush in and trip Evil Eye. Seeing an opening, Momo binds and grabs a hold of Evil Eye, but sadly Evil Eye's energy ball severs Momo's binds. As Evil Eye blows away Manjiro with a kick, he dashes towards Momo before she can react, only to load up a lethal kick. In the blink of an eye, several punches send Evil Eye leaping back, revealed to be the mantis shrimp who has come to assist Momo. Right on cue, a massive flying saucer shines its beam on the battlefield, only to reveal that Seiko has arrived, all whilst riding Taro. With Evil Eye glaring at Seiko, Seiko calls for Manjiro and the shrimp to follow after her, all three swarming Evil Eye as they begin exchanging blows. Taking charge, Seiko evades a devastating stomp from Evil Eye, choosing to spit her cigar to blind Evil Eye temporarily. As Seiko keeps Evil Eye busy, she called for Taro to begin his charge, and as Seiko knocks Evil Eye into Taro's path, Evil Eye is forced to blow Taro apart with a punch. Having purposely planted a talisman inside Taro, Manjiro is tasked with performing a ritual that begins reassembling Taro around Evil Eye, and within a few seconds, Taro has been put back together, all whilst Evil Eye has been captured. Seeing as things have been wrapped up, we see the mantis shrimp's child, Chiquitita, helping to put out the flames with the worm's corpse. Off to the side, we see Seiko scolding Manjiro for not helping Momo sooner, but Manjiro asks to be praised for a job well done. Cutting over to Momo, we see her running alongside the mantis shrimp back to Jin's home, and with the mantis shrimp's help, they break a hole back into the earthworm's pit. Upon seeing that magma has completely filled in the pit, Momo holds back her tears as she blames herself for leaving Akarin behind. But refusing to give up, Momo asks for Chiquitita to place the worm in the pit so she can search for Akarin. The mantis shrimp cries that it's too dangerous to enter into the fiery pit, and as the mantis shrimp holds Momo back from doing anything reckless, we see Chiquitita levitate the magma out of the pit with its spaceship beam. As the gang put out the hot, searing magma, Momo rushes to pull apart the thick ball before her, only to be relieved to see Akarin cradling Turbo Granny in his arms. Akarin is glad to see Momo, revealing that when he was trapped in the pit with Turbo Granny, it was ultimately the combination of the collapsing housing and the worm's mucus that created a protective barrier around them, ultimately preventing any magma from reaching them. Akron asks where Evil Eye is, apologizing since he wasn't able to hold him off long enough. But as Akron trips on a Momo, he reflexively backs away. Surprisingly, Momo leans in and embraces Akron, apologizing herself, seeing as she wasn't able to help rescue Akron sooner. Returning to Seiko's home, we see Seiko take charge and rally the gang to help perform a cleansing ritual on Jean, an event that doesn't end up freeing Jean. Choosing to head inside for a break, we see Arya amongst the crowd enjoying the meal as well, but she is a little annoyed that she wasn't invited to help rescue her trio. Seiko asks Manjuro about Rockin's sect, all whilst we see the mantis shrimp feeding Chiquitita some milk, but Arya demands to know why the mantis shrimp is back on Earth. The shrimp says the cow they gave them didn't produce milk, a byproduct of their planet, as it seems their world is submerged in liquid, but they still breathe oxygen. The mantis shrimp says it would be better if he lived on Earth, something Arya isn't opposed to as she adores Chiquitita. But suddenly the gang overhear Seiko mentioning how they'll need some outside help to free Jean from Evil Eye's grasp. Seiko says Jean will have to live inside of Teru until they can free him. And as Teru tries tasting some of the hot food, we suddenly hear Jean cry out in pain, something that attracts the gang's attention. Seiko utters that evil spirits can steal the voices of those they possess to trick people, asking for everyone to be on guard as Teru opens his face, and surprisingly Jean has regained control of his body. Wanting to test out something, Seiko retrieves some cold water and splashes it on Jean, only to see that Evil Eye has returned. When Seiko douses Evil Eye with some hot water, we see Jean is able to retake his body, a predicament that annoys the gang. Teru is a little concerned since he won't be able to see Hannah whilst Jean is inside of him. But Seiko takes the chance to apologize to our trio, uttering that she didn't expect Evil Eye to be the one causing issues for Jean. Turbo Granny mocks the humans for being so pathetic, especially since Evil Eye is a mountain spirit, a being close to a god. Normally, such a powerful spirit would liquefy the humans they possess. But interestingly, Jin's high spirit power is keeping Evil Eye in check. But over time, Evil Eye will get used to Jin's body and run rampant. Seiko says they'll have people watch over Jean until they figure something out. Plus, Jean is to stay in Kamigo City. Seiko does fear that they don't have much time until Evil Eye adapts to the seals they've placed on it, choosing to hand everyone some thermoses with hot water that they can splash onto Jean, only to warn Jean to avoid any sort of cold water in fear of reawakening Evil Eye. As the gang leave for the night, they hear the mantis shrimp is working on a dairy farm nearby, a convenient job that will help feed his family. Before the mantis shrimp leaves, he mentions how his name is Peeny Weeny, only to depart via beam through a spacecraft as he heads down the road to his new home. The next day, we see Manjuro driving everyone to visit Jin's parents who have been transferred to a hospital near their home. And as the gang get their hot water ready for any issues that may arise, we see Momo try to hold hands with Akron in the backseat. Akron is shy at first, but with some convincing, we see the lovebirds fiddling with each other's hands as they enter into a tunnel. Sadly, Jean breaks the tension by asking Momo to help him convince Teru to stop moving his body around, suddenly reminding the gang to pick up gifts for Jin's parents before they visit. Stopping at a general supermarket, we soon see Jean ecstatic to see his parents are well. And with Teru helping to move Jin's body, we see a news channel report that the volcano eruption in Jin's hometown was ultimately contained with no casualties. Additionally, it seems all the kiddos but Naki have been arrested for the horrific kidnappings. But as we follow Naki, we see she is on the run for the police who have been searching for her. As Naki runs through a forest, she reveals that she has been growing her body for 200 years, choosing to take out her anger on some nearby trees. Overflowing with anger, Naki morbidly begins tearing away at her body, only to reveal herself to be a subterranean in disguise, marking Momo as her enemy. The next day, we see Momo warmly greet Akron, and as our duo walk to school together, Akron hears that they'll be performing a Hayashi ritual to help distract Evil Eye as they free Jean. Momo admits that they're having issues recruiting people to help with the Hayashi ritual, freaking Akron out as he fears he'll have to fight Evil Eye again. But before Momo can ask Akron something personal, we see Muko and Miko appear. Muko demands to know where Jean is, all whilst Miko asks if the duo knows anything about a UFO sighting near a volcano that erupted recently. As our duo feign ignorance, we see Akron and the girls heading to school together, all whilst Momo complains about how Seiko won't buy her a phone. At school, we see Arya being shunned and ignored by her own friends, something she knew was bound to happen when she admitted spreading the false rumors about Momo. Before Arya can despair, we see Momo appear and invite her to join them for a chat, something that intrigues Arya's classmates. Arya is annoyed that Momo is being all casual with her at school, but Momo is glad to see Arya isn't still sad, and seeing as Akron is with them, Momo takes the chance to invite Arya and Akron to stay at her place moving forward. Immediately, Akron and Arya are surprised by such an invitation, hearing that Momo will need help when watching over Jean, especially since Manjiro and Seiko may need help if Evil Eye ever returns. Funnily, Akron and Arya are too flustered to give Momo an answer straight away, but our duo end up accepting, exciting everyone as the sleepover starts today onwards. Momo does take note of Arya's concerned expression, declaring that Arya doesn't need to hang out with them if her other friends hate it. But Arya says it was her own fault for alienating herself from her friends, so she'll deal with the repercussions herself. Back at Seiko's place, we see the seal using Teru's body has begun to fade, and upon seeing one of her talismans darken before her, Seiko asks Teru to release the seal they've placed around Jean. Seiko reminds Jean that moving forward he is not to touch any cold water, and as Teru tries rearranging his body back together, we see Akron and Momo have returned home. Jean rushes to greet our duo, only for everyone to take note of Arya, who has arrived all fashionably dressed, prompting Jean to help her move her things in. Seiko orders everyone to keep a thermos on them at all times, and as Teru heads to take a nap, we see the others sit down for a group dinner. Momo and Arya choose to chat about the makeup they use, all whilst Akron and Jean make plans to play Smash Brothers later. But as Akron passes over some cold soy sauce to Seiko, he accidentally spills some onto Jean, immediately reawakening Evil Eye, who begins wreaking havoc. With everyone locking in to combat Evil Eye, we see they're able to splash hot water and transform Jean back, all pissed that Jean destroyed Seiko's home. Akron notes that Evil Eye is getting stronger, but out of nowhere, 4 strange-looking people appear, only to be shooed off the property by Seiko. Momo wonders when the Hayashis will arrive, beginning to take her anger out on Arya, but suddenly the 4 strangers return once again. Revealing themselves to be the Hayashis, they introduce themselves as Patarsan, Yashikichi, Toshiro, and Hideji, all striking fabulous poses to make themselves known. Showing off their talent, we see the Hayashis hook up their electric instruments, exciting the gang as they wonder what powers these Hayashis have, but Seiko says the Hayashis are regular people. Apparently, their music should be able to echo into the spirit world, and seeing as they're normal beings, they also won't be harmed by spirits during the exorcism. As the Hayashis begin warming up, we see Seiko restart her cleansing ritual on Jean, and with the Hayashis now pumped up, they begin mashing their tunes to cheer Seiko on. Immediately, the volume from their performance ends up rippling throughout the air around them, an impact that causes nearby spirits to awaken and swarm the area, all excited to watch the Hayashis perform. With the performance getting more hectic by the second, we begin to notice Jean writhing in pain as the music is affecting Evil Eye, and when Momo helps with holding Jean down, she is suddenly able to access Evil Eye's true intentions. Jean cries that Evil Eye only wanted to dance and play with kids his age, and with Jean begging for Evil Eye to be spared, we see the Hayashis begin to reach even higher feats with their music. Strangely, Seiko suddenly stops the ritual and orders for the Hayashis to stop playing, announcing that they'll make Evil Eye part of their family. The gang is shocked by Seiko's declaration, wondering if they'll have to forever watch over Jean in case Evil Eye reemerges. But seeing as Jean needs their help, Akarin declares he'll become stronger to rival and suppress Evil Eye to help his friend. Flustered by Akarin's bravery, Momo says she'll train to get stronger as well. But this only fires Arya up as she says she won't lose to Momo. Jean is grateful for everyone's help, rushing to embrace everyone. But as it begins to rain, Evil Eye suddenly emerges and pummels Akarin. With Jean being splashed with some hot water, we see the Hayashis packing up their gear and heading home to escape the pouring rain, only for the gang to patch up the house with whatever cardboard they have laying around. Inside, Seiko asks Jean to tense his core and picture a beam coming out from his head and fingers. Plus, Jean must remain still when pushed. To help Jean learn, Momo shows off her mastery of the technique. Something Seiko is impressed Momo had learnt, but Jean suddenly remembers that he would tease Momo for the same pose when they were younger. Seiko reminds Jean that his spiritual energy is very dense, so mastery over it, and his chi flow may also mean mastery over Evil Eye himself. And with Jean taking such advice to heart, we see him awaken later that night only to head to the bathroom. Seeing as Jean had left him, Akarin quickly follows after Jean just in case, even helping Jean warm up the tap water to avoid any accidents. Akarin and Jean confirm to Momo that they have things under wraps, and when they head back to their rooms, Akarin chooses to stitch back together their makeshift wall, all whilst Jean stands back. Jean says he is sorry for causing everyone so much trouble, but Akarin says when Turbo Granny had possessed him, both Momo and Seiko had helped him without question. Akarin had even tried repaying Seiko for her kindness, but Seiko had refused the money, instead asking Akarin to pay forward the kindness, something Akarin is doing now for Jean. The next day, we see Arya and Momo both still exhausted from the previous day, but Arya dragged herself out of bed in order to perform her usual skin routine before applying her normal makeup. At breakfast, Arya takes charge and ensures everyone is well fed, but Arya refuses to serve Momo. With the trio heading to school, we see Jean wishing them the best, but the girls simply continue to argue and bicker all the way to school. In class, Momo cries that she needs a part-time job, especially since they need to rebuild their home. But this makes Miyuko remember that Rowena says she may have a part-time job for Momo. Momo says she'll take the job, but her friends fear her bossy attitude will get her fired, something Momo says she'll deal with if it comes down to it. With Momo heading to meet with Rowena, we see Miko and Miyuko informing Akarin of Momo's new part-time job, and with the girls getting an idea, they choose to drag Akarin on a date with them, seeing as Momo is gone. Although Akarin fights for his life, the girls manage to wrestle Akarin and drag him out of the school, through the city and onto a train. With escape being futile, we see the trio heading to visit the Kamigo shopping street, only to enter into a sketchy-looking alley. Boarding an elevator, the trio enter into a maid cafe, only to greet Momo herself, who has been assigned her new role as a maid. With Momo embarrassed, we see Akarin trying to flee, but Miko and Miyuko are insistent that Akarin stay and have Momo service him. With Akarin seated, he can't help but find Momo adorable, and with Miko and Miyuko ordering a drink, they demand that Momo pour it for them. When Momo gets annoyed, she is reminded to treat the customers well, and to bless the drink. Momo and the gang are asked to create a heart with their fingers. Wrapping up their session, we see Miko and Miyuko satisfied with their scheming, but before they can leave with Akarin, Akarin cries that he wants to chat with Momo a bit longer. Now alone, Akarin hears that Momo is working until 10 at night, but still feeling shy, Momo demands that Akarin leave. Obliging, Akarin heads off as Momo gets to work, and with Momo holding back her embarrassment, she soldiers through her shift, all while attending to the various customers. Clocking out, Momo heads out onto the quiet street, feeling a little gloomy at how alone she is, but out of nowhere, Akarin arrives. Having waited outside for Momo, Akarin utters that they can walk home together, flustering Momo as she rewards Akarin by holding his hand. At home, we see Arya sipping on some cold boba tea whilst observing Manjiro helping with Jin's training, all amazed to see that Jin has learned how to remain still even when pushed. Seeing as Jin may be ready, Seiko orders Manjuro to prepare some hot water as she'll be drawing out Evil Eye with some room temperature soy sauce. And with Seiko reminding Jean to focus, Seiko lets loose a single drop of soy sauce. As the cold droplet touches Jin's skin, Evil Eye's presence begins to erupt from Jin's body. But having anticipated this, Jean manages to calm himself and steel his resolve, ultimately suppressing Evil Eye from taking over. Seiko is impressed Jean is learning fast, but she warns Jean he still can't handle cold liquids, only for Momo and Akaran to return home. With Momo warming up with some hot water, Seiko is surprised to hear that Momo had gotten a job, and as Jean and Arya rush to chat with our duo, Arya accidentally bumps into Jean, spilling her cold tea onto Jean. Immediately, Evil Eye makes himself known only to erect a barrier to deflect any hot water the gang will splash onto him. Locking on a Momo, Evil Eye traps her in his cursed house, and he begins marching towards her. We see the others trying to break through the house, but no luck. As Evil Eye prepares to clobber Momo, Momo manages to blow him back with her psychic powers, but Evil Eye simply collapses his cursed house to bring them closer together. Now with his arms around Momo's neck, Evil Eye is caught off guard when Momo spits the hot water she had in her mouth, officially bringing Jean back. Immediately, Akaran rushes to Momo's side, but Jean is still in disbelief, seeing as the people around him got hurt because of him, and before the gang head to bed, we see Arya apologizing for being unable to help whilst Akaran declares he'll need to become stronger. The next day, we see Akaran visiting Peony in his human form, a disguise that impresses Akaran, but most importantly, Akaran begs Peony to train him to fight. Sadly, Peony doesn't like violence, so instead he asks for Akaran's help around the farm, only to send him off later that night. But Akaran says he'll return soon and become Peony's apprentice. At home, Seiko takes note of how awkward it has gotten between Jean and Akaran, and to make things worse, Manjuro refuses to risk their lives with Evil Eye further. Manjuro says he'll personally call for the Hayashis to help with eradicating Evil Eye's spirit. But Seiko utters that she is simply trying to do her best for all parties involved, something Manjuro believes is not the right call. At the same time, we see Akaran training how to throw a punch, but with Turbo Granny checking on him, she mocks how pathetic Akaran is. Hearing that Akaran wants to dominate Evil Eye in battle, Turbo Granny regretfully tells Akaran that he'll never catch up to Evil Eye's power nor techniques, and hearing that Akaran will do anything to grow stronger, Turbo Granny agrees to help. With Arya following our duo, we see Turbo Granny taking Akaran to school, and as our duo sneak in, they're caught by Arya, who demands to know what they're doing. When our duo try ignoring her, Arya simply continues to tag along, and when Turbo Granny mocks Arya, Arya transforms only to stomp Turbo Granny into the ground. Now inside the school, Arya and Turbo Granny continue to bicker all whilst our trio head into a music room, only to be frightened seeing images of several music legends on the wall. When Turbo Granny plays the piano, we see Arya accidentally smacking Akaran only for Turbo Granny to order Akaran to begin jumping. Replicating Akaran's rhythm, Turbo Granny shows that Evil Eye's rhythm is 4 times faster than Akaran's. Turbo Granny reveals that Arya in her transformed body can perform 4 switches in 1 beat, and Evil Eye is also 4 switches, but in his cursed house, he is capable of unleashing 10 actions in a single beat, a complete behemoth compared to Akaran's 2 switch movements. Out of nowhere, we see a spirit appear behind Turbo Granny, and as it plays the piano, it drags our trio into its domain, prompting the other spirits to show themselves. When Akaran and Arya try defusing the situation, we see the spirits forcing our duo to transform and evade their music blasts. And with Akaran dashing past the notes the spirits project, he gets curious and touches one of them only for a massive explosion to ring out. Having almost lost his arm, our trio realize the notes are bombs, and with the spirits conjuring hundreds of notes, we suddenly see the scenery be stripped away as our trio are bombarded by the music notes. With Akaran and Arya evading the best they can, the spirits continue their pursuit, but Arya seems to be evading the projectiles fine, but Akaran seems to be barely keeping up. When Arya tries weaving her hair through the music notes towards the spirits, she fails to reach them. allowing the spirits to continue laying waste to our trio. Strangely, when Ocarina and Turbo Granny are struck by the rest musical note, they're strangely frozen in place, allowing them to be more easily struck, all whilst the spirits turn their full attention to Arya. With Ocarina and Turbo Granny still alive, Ocarina curses at himself for being so weak, whilst Arya seems to have adapted quite well, but Turbo Granny simply orders for Ocarina to move to the spirit's rhythm. Focusing in, Ocarina remembers how captivating Hayashi's performance was, all whilst Arya notes how her hair can't reach the spirits, seeing as the music notes surrounding them are acting like a shield. Sadly, as Arya continues to dance around the projectiles, she makes a misstep and accidentally gets stuck in some loose soil, allowing the spirits to bombard her. In the blink of an eye, Ocarina intercepts the projectiles and drags Arya to safety. And having taken inspiration from the Hayashis, Ocarina forces his body to rhythmically weave around the notes approaching him. With a dust cloud obstructing the spirit's vision, we see Arya sneaking up below the spirits only to grab one of them, instantly knocking them out as their head bobbles off only for their bodies to evaporate back into the image of them. Seeing as our trio are a threat, the spirits begin to amp up their output in an attempt to slay our trio. But sadly, both Arya and Ocarina are easily able to dodge in the incoming swarm of projectiles. Annoyed, we see the spirits once again change the surrounding scenery, only to call forth several massive giants that begin to sing. Creepily, hundreds of illusions begin pouring out of the giants' mouths, illusions that begin swarming our trio in hopes of tiring them. Although our trio can see the spirits in the distance, they're ultimately swarmed and piled on by the endless illusions being summoned. Desperate, we see Ocarina grabbing hold of Arya's hand as she swings herself into the air with her hair and onto one of the giants. But this only causes the other giants to swat away our duo, accidentally harming their giant friend in the process. Needing to keep them busy, Arya stays behind, all while she flings Ocarina towards the spirits, stealing her resolve as she declares she'll buy time for Ocarina to finish things. With Ocarina rushing towards the spirits on stage, we see the surrounding area being filled with more illusions. And as Ocarina rushes past the crowd, we see Arya using her movement to make the giants turn on each other. To add fuel to the flame, Arya manages to take down all of the giants, but strangely the giants continue to sing. As for Ocarina, he dives head first into the approaching swarm, occasionally leaping through the air and bursting through the surrounding music notes. Seeing as he can only go full throttle twice, Ocarina suddenly understands what Turbo Granny was trying to teach him. Focusing in as he accelerates towards the remaining 5 spirits only to monstrously land a strike on all of them simultaneously. With the spirits reverting back into their images, we see our trio return to the music room, only for Ocarina to thank Arya for believing in him. Arya is giddy to see Ocarina so cute, but she manages to hold herself back from fangirling, plus Ocarina takes the chance to thank Turbo Granny for the rhythm lesson. When Ocarina asks what they just fought, Turbo Granny reveals that if they play the piano at night, the music legends guarding the room will attack them. Comedically, we see Turbo Granny playing the piano by accident, but as we cut back to the others, we see Manjiro trying to convince Jean and Momo to call back the Hayashis to deal with Evil Eye. Manjiro reminds everyone that Evil Eye will only get stronger the longer they wait, and seeing as no one is saying anything, Manjiro declares that they'll start the exorcism with the Hayashis tomorrow. With Jean completely despairing at the trouble he has caused for everyone, the gang suddenly hear Ocarina calling out to them, and when they peek outside, they see Ocarina, Arya, and Turbo Granny challenging Jean to a duel. Before Momo can calm Ocarina down, Ocarina cries that he was pissed when Evil Eye attacked Momo, and seeing as they can't wait for Jean to tame Evil Eye, Ocarina declares that he'll help Jean beat Evil Eye into submission. When Manjiro utters that he'll be exorcising Evil Eye tomorrow, Seiko stops Manjiro from intervening, allowing Ocarina to get the rematch he yearns for. With everyone stepping aside, Arya splashes cold water onto Jean, only for Evil Eye to awaken, gleefully clashing with Ocarina as both of their attacks cause the surrounding area to quake. Rushing towards Evil Eye, Akron evades their energy ball only to evenly cancel out Evil Eye's fist with his own, but Evil Eye tries sneaking in a kick. Reacting fast enough, Akron dodges and counters with an uppercut, a move that blows Evil Eye back. Evil Eye uses the space to leap back in for an axe kick, but Akron leans back to evade only to fire off a devastating kick. Caught off guard, Evil Eye tanks the blow, but whilst in midair, sends out a flurry of energy balls, prompting Akron to leap towards the eye of the storm. Maneuvering around the energy balls, Akron detects Evil Eye sneaking up on him, an attack that Akron was waiting for as he meets Evil Eye's fist with a kick of his own. With a massive ripple decimating the surrounding area, we see the boys take less than a second to breathe, only to resume their brawl, both zipping through the air as the others watch on. Seeing Akron on the offensive, Evil Eye tries making space using his energy ball, but Akron simply continues the onslaught by pounding Evil Eye with several uppercuts, finally forcing Evil Eye to leap into the air and call forth his cursed house to halt Akron. Sadly, Akron had managed to evade capture, immediately overtaking the battle with his monstrous aura. With Evil Eye being helplessly tossed around, Akron prepares to go full throttle, and with Akron dashing towards Evil Eye, he manages to headbutt the spirit into Seiko's home. Immediately, the attack causes Seiko's house to be blown to smithereens, and when Akron goes to check on Jin's body, he is surprised to see Evil Eye still has energy to fight. As Evil Eye marches towards Akron, Momo realizes that Akron can no longer transform since he used up the last of his full throttle, but Akron heroically cries that he'll be the one to take down Evil Eye. Seeing Evil Eye up and close, Akron is ordered to continue fighting, but before the others can step in, Akron says he refuses to fight weaklings. Catching everyone off guard, Akron continues to scold Evil Eye for being weak, but Evil Eye snaps back, declaring that he is very strong. Akron promises to fight Evil Eye whenever he wants, but Evil Eye must promise to never harm anyone else, an offer Evil Eye surprisingly accepts. Akron adds that he is willing to fight Evil Eye once a week, a declaration Seiko considers bold, but seeing as Akron has things under wraps, Turbo Granny explains to Momo that this was Akron's plan all along. Apparently, Akron had used the fact that Evil Eye is like a newborn spirit wanting to play constantly, and by being the sole person that Evil Eye can play with, Akron can ensure no one else is hurt. With the boys agreeing to have their brawl every Tuesday after school, Evil Eye seals their deal by handing Akron its underwear, and just like that, Jean is given back his body. Akron tells Jean that he no longer has to worry seeing as they've tamed Evil Eye, but funnily Jean is more curious as to why everyone is diverting their eyes from him. The next day, Manjiro agrees to take care of Evil Eye's underwear, only to return back to his shrine. Right on cue, the gang are surprised to see Jin's parents are visiting them, and with Jean holding back his tears, Seiko instructs Jean to continue his chi training as Jean and his parents drive off as well. Seeing they aren't needed anymore, Akron and Arya begin to depart, but Momo demands Akron to stay a bit longer, slowly approaching and exchanging flirty glances with Akron. Sadly, the tension is broken as Arya stops the lovebirds from doing anything further, and when Momo tries cooling down at home, she remembers that her home was decimated during the boys' brawl. Seiko announces that they'll cool off at a nearby bathhouse, prompting Seiko, Momo, Turbo Granny, and Hannah to all board a train, and for the rest of the day, the girls simply relax with baths and massages, only to make their trek back home right as the sun sets. Momo fears that they'll have to rebuild their home, but Seiko says she'll figure something out, stressing out Momo as Seiko is taking on all the burden herself. At home, the girls are terrified by the creature on their property, instantly kicking it aside and demanding to know what it is. But surprisingly, Arya and Akron have returned alongside Peony and Chiquitita. Akron says they've recruited Mr. Ludris to help rebuild their home, and when Peony and Akron offer to help as well, Seiko says they shouldn't be concerning themselves with her issues. Funnily, Momo doesn't agree as she could use all the help they can get, leading Peony to reveal some nanoskin that can help with the construction. Demonstrating, Peony shows off the nanoskin's ability to morph and be reshaped into anything the gang like. Plus, anyone can use the nanoskin as long as they envision what they're building. Getting to work, we see the gang slowly begin to reconstruct Seiko's home from the ground up, and with everyone working throughout the night, they wrap up construction by the next day. Akarin is relieved that their hangout spot has returned back to normal, and with Momo agreeing to host the gang anytime, we see everyone depart, all whilst Momo and Seiko clock out for the day. Switching perspectives, we see Jin's mother driving sporadically, all whilst Jin runs alongside his parents' car. And in mere moments, Jin and his family arrive at Seiko's home, ready to help rebuild their home. Sadly, there is no work that needs to be done. Plus, it seems Momo and Seiko are catching up on the sleep they missed out, cutting over to the next day, where Jin reports that Evil Eye is keeping his promise and not hurting others. Plus, Jin's connection with Evil Eye is getting stronger thanks to his training. Seeing as it's the perfect chance, Jin asks if Momo loves anyone, but getting flustered, Momo tries beating up Jin for asking. Out of nowhere, Jin is swarmed by his female classmates, all wondering where he has been. But before Momo can leave, she notices Jin has transformed as he has been given some cold yogurt. Before Evil Eye can weird everyone out, Momo drags him away, but when they enter the school ground, Evil Eye locks onto a nearby soccer game. Immediately, Evil Eye decimates the surrounding players as his ball skills are unmatched, forcing Momo to intervene once more. With there being no hot drinks left at the school's vending machine, Momo is forced to allow Evil Eye to take over Jin's classes, and immediately everyone wonders why Jin is acting weird. Momo tries asking for Evil Eye to calm down, but Evil Eye seems to be enjoying himself, and when it is lunchtime, Momo is saddened to see there is no warm foods in the cafeteria. With it being Evil Eye's first time eating noodles, he tries stuffing down the meal with his hands, but Momo chooses to show Evil Eye how to use chopsticks. Towards the end of school, Miko and Muko ask Momo why Jin is acting strange. And when the girls wonder if a ghost is causing Jin's weird behaviors, they show off sightings of a supposed golden ghost ball that is haunting a nearby housing complex. At the brink of dawn, we follow Kenta Sakata performing his usual morning routine, only to confidently strut to school. At the same time, Kenta took note of the blossoming relationship between Momo and Akarin, and in class, Kenta observed Akarin closely as he shared an interest in the supernatural as well, even trying to chat with Akarin during lunch, but he couldn't find him as Akarin was looking for Momo. Kenta did find it peculiar that Akarin and Momo are close enough to touch lips, but continuing his endeavors, Kenta would try to spark Akarin's interest by showing off all the cool toys he has. Sadly, Akarin doesn't seem to care. Having no choice, Kenta confronts Akarin, declaring the boy to be his enemy as he demands to know why Momo likes Akarin. Kenta cries that he wants to be popular just like Akarin, but right on cue, Momo appears announcing that she has found Akarin's golden ball, a statement that flusters Kenta. Momo is happy to see Kenta and Akarin are so close, and before Momo and Akarin can head outside to chat some more, Rin Sawaki, the Class B president, asks Momo to stop causing a scene in her class. Rin also accuses Momo of dragging Akarin around, offering to stand up for Akarin, but this fires Momo up as she doesn't want another girl to care so much for Akarin. Off to the side, Kenta can't help but be jealous at all the attention Akarin is getting, and when he tries getting everyone's attention with a pose, he only manages to weird them out. That evening, Momo reminds Akarin that he has been getting quite popular recently, something that excites Akarin. Momo utters that the image of the golden ball taken seemed to have the space around it warped, but at the same time we see Kenta tailing our duo, declaring he'll figure out the secret to get popular as well. As our duo prepare to leave school grounds, they suddenly notice Kenta following them. And before Kenta can explain himself, he magically begins to float. In the blink of an eye, Kenta begins flying towards Momo, but Akarin transforms and shoves her out of harm's way, leaving Kenta to eat the ground. Off in the distance, our duo spot the golden ball where Kenta was swiftly rushing to grab a hold of it, but manages to slip from Momo's psychic grasp. As for Akarin, he is blown back as the golden ball seems to have a physical body, and before they can investigate, the ball seems to run off. With Momo and Akarin chasing after the ball, Kenta is tasked with guarding their bags. And as our duo leap up the stairs of a building complex, they eventually lose sight of the ball. Out of nowhere, the ball appears, and blows Momo off Akarin's back only for Akarin to be struck several times, followed by the ball fleeing once more. On the roof, Akarin and Momo work together to subdue the ball, but with every hit it manages to bounce back and flee, forcing our duo to continue after it. Seeing the golden ball descending, Momo cries for Akarin to hold on to her as she swings after it. But the ball catches the duo off guard and knocks Momo loose from her hold. Luckily, Momo softens her fall, apologizing to Akarin as he was almost crushed by her weight. As our duo complain about how unfair it is for their enemy to be invisible, they suddenly hear Kinta crying out, prompting our duo to rush towards the noise. Right on cue, they spot Kinta's body falling from the building, leading Momo to save the boy with her psychic abilities, but Momo can only scold Kinta for following them. Seeing the golden ball approaching them, Kinta offers to subdue the being, but when he runs towards the ball, he only ends up tripping over himself. As the ball flees through an apartment building, it tries escaping by smashing through several consecutive apartments, but Kinta is seen chasing after it all whilst Momo swings beside them. As for Akarin, he has run ahead of the ball, allowing our trio to pincer the ball from 3 directions, leading Momo to cry that she can see the being housing the golden ball. Using her psychic arms as reference, Momo orders Akarin to charge the creature before it escapes. And with Akarin going full throttle, he rushes forth and rails the being before him. Kinta declares that he knew the creature's invisibility could be weakened if they observed the creature from different angles. But Akarin and Momo are more interested to see that the creature carrying around the golden ball is a kaiju-looking monster. Seeing as they can no longer see the golden ball, they reason they should head to retrieve the ball before the creature wakes up, but right on cue our trio detect the kaiju rapidly growing and enlarging its body. In mere moments, the kaiju has grown bigger than the nearby, surrounding buildings, a phenomenon that alerts our trio. With the massive kaiju looming over the gang, we see our trio fleeing onto the streets nearby, and coincidentally they bump into Arya and Jean, who begin running as well. When Kinta trips over, Momo and Arya quickly use their powers to hold off the kaiju from stomping on Kinta, only for Akarin to drag Kinta to safety. Momo orders Jean to drag Kinta away, and when Arya tries drilling into the kaiju with her hair, its tough exterior surprises everyone. Momo notes how it was quite quick when it was small, but now it seems to be very slow yet big, leading Arya to wrap her hair around the beast's size, but she fails to topple it. Out of nowhere, an energy surge can be felt rising towards the tip of the kaiju's horns, only for an eruption of lightning to force the gang into hiding, a power Akarin recognizes belongs to the space kaiju alien. With the monster letting out a roar, Arya takes the chance to pick up a nearby car, only to rail the kaiju with it, an attack that manages to make the kaiju stumble back. Following up, Momo, whilst riding Akarin, flings a car at the monster's feet, successfully bringing the creature to its knees. Out of nowhere, the monster's tail swings around and blows Momo and Akarin aside, forcing Arya to step up as she latches onto a nearby crane, only to drag and twist her body in order to smash the crane into the kaiju. As Arya celebrates her genius attack, she is caught off guard when the kaiju suddenly grabs a hold of her, and before she is devoured by the creature, Momo tosses various billboards to draw the creature's attention. Pissed, Arya breaks free from the monster's grasp, but this only causes the monster to go on a rampage, smashing and scanning the surrounding area. The kaiju lets loose another lightning blast that shreds the nearby buildings, and having locked onto Momo and Akarin, Momo acts quick and erects a barrier to hold off the monster beam attack. Akarin wonders what the monster is after, having read that space kaijus create electricity by channeling a power source, and seeing as they'll need to hunt down the monster's source of power, Momo begins to collect and store up the electricity being shot at them. Turning the tides, Momo manages to fling the electricity back at the kaiju, a blow that knocks it down. Seeing an opening, Arya soars in for the finishing blow, but strangely the monster has disappeared. Horrifically, Akarin and Momo cry for Arya to be careful, but a single stomp manages to blow Arya back. Arya is annoyed that the monster has suddenly gone invisible, but when she leaps into the air to scout out its position, a sudden beam pierces the surrounding dust clouds and consumes Arya. To top things off, the monster continues to flail around, but switching over to Jean, he is seen fleeing with Kinta. Jean warns Kinta not to get his sweat or snot on him, but Kinta can't help it since he is freaked out, and before Jean knows it, Evil Eye has taken over his body. Immediately, Evil Eye's aura freaks Kinta out, but Evil Eye is excited as he gets to duel Ocaran today, choosing to run off all whilst Kinta chases after him. Back with Arya, she is seen unconscious from the kaiju's attacks, and before the kaiju snuffs out Arya, Ocaran goes full throttle and pulls Arya away from the impact zone. Helping out, Momo drags our duo to safety, but a stray projectile manages to buy them time to retreat. Zipping through town, Momo manages to carry Arya and Ocaran back to Seiko's home. And when they check on Arya's condition, they realize she has been faking her injury to have an excuse to cling onto Ocaran. Annoyed, Momo pulls her away from Ocaran, only for Evil Eye to appear demanding that Ocaran fight him. Sadly, Ocaran says they can't fight today, and seeing as Seiko isn't home, Momo fears they'll have to deal with the kaiju themselves. Strangely, Ocaran takes note of the strange behavior their home is exuding, and to make things worse, the kaiju seems to have tracked them down, only to begin its march towards them. Getting an idea, Ocaran says he has a plan to defeat the kaiju with the nanoskin they used for Seiko's home, and with the threat imminent, the gang head inside for a meeting. Ocaran reminds the gang that the nanoskin is a type of nanomachine that takes the shape of anything the holder desires, leading Ocaran to begin reshaping the entire house around them to create something big. Sadly, Ocaran's vision begins to wobble as Arya clings to him, and seeing as the home is closing in on them, Kinta offers to take charge and reshape the house for them. In the blink of an eye, Kinta lets his imagination run wild as he rebuilds Seiko's home, and in mere moments, various trapdoors and compartments reveal themselves only to drag the gang into separate compartments. It is revealed that Kinta had imagined a massive robot they can pilot, and with it resembling a statue of Buddha, the gang prepare to stop the kaiju in its place. Funnily, Momo begins to freak out seeing as she is unsure of how to man their mech, and with Kinta being of no help, the gang begin pushing buttons at random. Immediately, the robot begins acting strange, and a section of it begins to fall off, but Kinta refuses to give in as he pulls on some nearby levers. Sadly, the robot simply falls over, and with some more configuration, Kinta manages to get the robot back onto its knees, but a simple kick from the kaiju sends the robot flying. With no way of fighting back, the robot is ultimately strung up by the kaiju's tail, only to be repetitively smashed into the ground, all whilst Ocaran is ejected from the mech. Although Ocaran's fall is softened thanks to a parachute, he turns back only to see Evil Eye breaking free from the mech, but the kaiju is seen stomping Evil Eye back into the robot. Luckily, Evil Eye overpowers the kaiju and pushes the creature down, but Evil Eye is still flung across the field, having been blown back by the shockwave for the kaiju falling over. When Ocaran checks on Evil Eye, he is horrified to see the kaiju electrify the robot whilst pinning it down, and seeing as he has no other choice, Ocaran prepares to ask Evil Eye to help fight off the monster. At that moment, the kaiju locks onto Ocaran and prepares to stomp him out, but the robot suddenly springs to life as it catches the kaiju's feet. Kinta cries that he has figured out the controls, plus he can use his imagination on the nanoskin to have the robot bend to its will, and within mere moments, the mech has regenerated all wounds and taken on a more majestic form. As the kaiju rushes the robot, Kinta takes charge and lunges towards the creature with a punch to its stomach. But before Kinta can celebrate, the robot's arm is snagged by the kaiju's tail. Dragged across the battlefield, Kinta uses the momentum to smack the monster with a punch, followed up with a sidekick that rocks the creature. When the kaiju fires off its beam attack, Kinta is forced to relinquish one of the robot's arms. But improvising, Kinta tosses the robot's severed arm to land another punch. Magically, Kinta simply re-stitches the robot's severed arm, only to swing the kaiju around by its tail. Tossing the creature aside, Kinta and the kaiju end up back in the building district, and with both monsters wrestling each other, the kaiju begins to charge up its beam attack once more. Flashing back, Kinta still remembers the times when he was bullied for loving and adoring the fictional books he brought to school. But at the same time, the robot seems to have been blasted back by the kaiju's beam. With Kinta very aware of the feeling of being knocked down, he chooses to get back up and continue fighting, crying out that he loves robots and won't change for anyone. Rushing the monster, Kinta starts by grabbing a hold of the creature and flinging it over his shoulder, followed up by a punch that stuns the creature only for his spinning attack from above to place the kaiju to sleep for good. With Akarin and Evil Eye arriving on the scene, they're horrified to see the kaiju has gone invisible once more, shocking Kinta as he is smacked in the face by a sneak attack. Although Kinta is calm, his robot continues to be pummeled and tossed around by the kaiju's attacks. And to make things worse, the robot has lost all of its limbs. With the kaiju stomping on the robot's head, various airbags save Kinta from being squashed, and sadly, it seems the airbags are preventing Kinta from ejecting himself from the robot. Right on cue, Momo employs her powers to grab a hold of a claw from the kaiju, allowing Arya to deploy her hair and wrap up the creature. Seeing as they now see their target, Momo swiftly helps to retrieve the robot's arms and legs, only to grab a hold of the wrapped-up kaiju. Tossing and spinning the monster into the air, the gang watches as the kaiju tries breaking free from its binds using its electricity, but Momo could care less as she smashes the creature into the ground. In mere moments, the giant kaiju reverts into its tiny form, and with a massive robot looming over the kaiju, the surrounding area suddenly reverts back to normal. Immediately, a crowd of people swarm the massive robot. But coming up with an idea, Momo quickly morphs the robot into a flying saucer only to flee the scene. Back home, the flying saucer transforms back into Seiko's home, but with some extra perks. But Momo and Arya are seen throwing up, having been continuously flung around whilst manning the pilot. Kinta himself seems grateful that he was able to live out his dream and pilot a mech. But as we cut over to Akarin, he is horrified to see the body of the kaiju in the middle of the road. Needing help, Akarin seeks out Evil Eye, only to revert him back to Jean by feeding Evil Eye a steamed bun. With some extra manpower, Jean and Akarin heave the kaiju onto their shoulders, both choosing to flee the area whilst onlookers chase after them. But not before long they manage to lose the people following them, successfully retrieving the kaiju without issue. Right on cue, Kinta appears greeting the boys, and when he confirms that the girls are all right, Akarin reveals that they fought the kaiju to retrieve a golden ball. Intrigued, Kinta offers to assist the gang any way he can. When Akarin heads to open up the kaiju's mouth, he suddenly freaks out, having spotted a person inside of the monster. Upon seeing a zip inside the kaiju, Akarin chooses to unzip the kaiju only to unveil the body of a girl. As Momo and Arya head outside to check on the commotion, she becomes speechless when she spots the strange girl embracing Akarin with a kiss, a sight that flips Momo's world upside down.